Her birth took her mother's life, but her father still cherished her like the apple of his eye. He even placed her on the throne when she was only 1 year old. On the day Mabel was born, a divine oracle descended upon the Holy Kingdom. At the eastern edge, a seed that would save the world would be planted. Because of this, she not only received her family's love, but was even adored by people from other nations. However, in her previous life, her life was incomparably tragic. Her father, with a criminal record, drank and gambled all day long. Her mother, driven into a corner, also abandoned her and left. Her perpetually indebted father kept harassing her, even snatching away the tuition money she had painstakingly saved from part-time work. In the end, he even pushed her off a high-rise building with his own hands. Just as she calmly accepted her fate, an incomparably gentle voice came to her ears. What a cute little one. In just a few days, you've already grown a little again. She guessed that she had been reincarnated, and through the conversations of everyone around her, she confirmed that she had become a princess in a foreign land. Although being born with a silver spoon in her mouth should have been a good thing, the moment she was born, she caused her birth mother to die from exhaustion. So she naturally assumed that her father would surely be cold and disgusted toward her. But even so, Mabel did not care. After all, the family affection in her previous life had already been tragic enough. So in this life, she had long since stopped hoping to be loved. But what she did not expect was this: the way her emperor father looked at her. Even just an accidental meeting of eyes would fill him with joy. He would even reach out and gently stroke her head, praising her for being very smart, so little, and already able to recognize her father. But Mabel was not moved in the slightest, because once before, she too had been treated like a rare treasure. But later, everything changed, so she believed that nothing stayed the same forever. Yet she did not know that, right now, she was being loved steadfastly by her father. It turned out that this continent had 3 great powers: the Kingdom of Orphe, the Kingdom of Bryn, and the great empire of Emano, where she now was. Second was the enemy nation Bryn, and lastly the neutral Holy Kingdom. In this place where everyone worshipped the gods, the Holy Kingdom was regarded as the gods' representative and held an extremely high status. They regarded Mabel as the seed from the prophecy. Every day, they sent letters demanding that she be brought to the Holy Kingdom. Emperor Este bore the pressure and refused them again and again. But in the end, this was not a long-term solution, because they knew that Mabel had an older brother, Oscar, who could inherit the throne. So they had even more reason to take the princess away. Just as the emperor was thinking about how to deal with this, the eldest prince Oscar burst in and questioned him. When exactly are you going to agree? Unexpectedly, what Oscar was talking about was going to see his younger sister Mabel. For this day, he had waited a full month. Not only had he been so excited last night that he could not sleep, he had even finished his swordsmanship lesson early today. The emperor had originally planned to refuse, but seeing how dejected the little guy looked, he still decided to let the siblings meet. After all, his daughter was still small and would not remember him. Before long, the two of them arrived at the princess's room. Mabel, who had just fallen asleep, was woken up, pouting. She was very unhappy, thinking to herself, "This person is here again. If I had known, I should have kept pretending to sleep." At this moment, a head suddenly popped out by her bedside. Looking at this unfamiliar face, she silently made a deduction. She confirmed that this boy was the older brother the wet nurse had mentioned. Mabel irritably wanted to drive them out, but as a baby who had just turned 1 month old, she could only make babbling sounds. Seeing this, Oscar was beside himself with excitement. He said Mabel must be calling for her brother. The emperor was unwilling to be outdone and said she was clearly calling for daddy. Mabel was utterly speechless. She could only stare at the wet nurse for help, but the wet nurse thought she was hungry. In order to drive the two away as quickly as possible, she desperately drank milk, but the result was the opposite. Instead, it made the emperor even happier. He even wanted to feed his daughter milk himself. No matter how she struggled, it was useless, so she could only close her eyes and gulp it down. In the end, with no surprise at all, she threw up all over the emperor. Everyone panicked, because the emperor had once been famous for his brutality, but no one expected that he would not be angry at all. Instead, he smiled and said, "The milk our Mabel spits up is holy water." Then, he gently wiped the milk stains from the corner of his daughter's mouth. This bizarre scene gave Mabel a terrible headache. She hoped the eldest prince beside her could talk some sense into the emperor. But Oscar was so excited that all he wanted was to hold his little sister. Mabel was completely speechless. She could only silently pray that if there really was a god in this world, then please stop these two from continuing to hover around her. But after only a few days, she became absolutely certain that this world had no god at all. Just to cultivate her temperament, they actually turned a royal heirloom into a hanging ornament. And in Mabel's eyes, absolutely everything about this was abnormal. Right now, she only wanted herself to grow up quickly and leave this place as soon as possible. Through the effort of these past few days, she was already able to skillfully control her fingers to grasp things. The next step was to learn to lift her neck before learning to roll over. However, no matter how hard she tried, she still failed. Just as she was sulking by herself, her brother Oscar sneaked in again. He wanted to get a little closer to his younger sister, but because he was filthy all over, he was stopped by the wet nurse. So he could only go to the bathroom nearby to wash first. However, at this moment, the wet nurse noticed that Mabel had sweated a lot. She thought Mabel had caught a cold and hurriedly had someone call the doctor. Oscar, who had just come out after washing, also panicked when he saw the scene. He rushed to his sister at lightning speed, begging her to pull herself together. Mabel was almost speechless. It was really awkward that no one could understand what she was saying. Before long, the Emperor came rushing in a great flurry. He gently stroked his daughter's cheek with great tenderness, as if treating a fragile treasure. After the doctor examined her, it was confirmed that Mabel's body was perfectly healthy. She had probably just sweated because it was too hot. Only after hearing this did the Emperor finally let out a sigh of relief. He pulled his daughter tightly into his arms, and Mabel, too, rarely felt a trace of warmth. From this day on, Mabel no longer dared to exercise casually. After all, as long as she made the slightest movement, it would bring unnecessary trouble. And her peaceful life, once again, underwent a change. This day was the day of her first walk outside. The wet nurse and servants had started preparing several days earlier. From head to toe, everything had been carefully thought out. Even the baby carriage was made by the Emperor himself after smashing a national treasure. Thinking of this made Mabel's head ache. But the moment she went outside, she instantly changed her mind, her eyes full of curious light. The imperial palace was even more magnificent than she had imagined. But outside, there was no magic maintaining a constant temperature, and she still shivered slightly from the cold. Seeing this, everyone took off their coats and covered her with them, afraid that she might catch cold. Just then, the Emperor suddenly appeared. He scooped Mabel up in one motion. He hoped she would have fun today. Then he covered her with his own coat. Everyone was stunned, because the Emperor's clothes were made of precious magical materials. Yet he had casually draped them over the little princess, just like that. It was obvious how important the little princess was in his heart. Soon, the group arrived at the forest in the northern part of the imperial city. Looking at that azure sky, she could not help sighing again. Her previous life had clearly not ended that long ago, yet it felt hazy, as though it had happened a very, very long time ago. That somewhat melancholy look, however, seemed to Oscar as though she was sleepy. So Oscar hugged her tightly in his arms. He coaxed her to sleep, as if soothing a priceless treasure. This left Mabel somewhat puzzled. Why was he treating her so well? Was it only because she was his younger sister in name? But Mabel still could not bring herself to regard him and the Emperor as family, and she always felt awkward inside. At this moment, the servant Xavier shouted that he had found a divine beast. Everyone except Oscar was extremely curious. The wet nurse took Mabel back, intending to stay where they were, and let Oscar and the others go over to take a look. This made Mabel anxious. Her original world had no such thing as a divine beast, so she was curious too and wanted to go see, but unfortunately no one could understand what she was saying. Seeing that they were about to go farther and farther away, she shouted loudly, "Mimi." Everyone was stunned. A 2-month-old baby talking was simply genius, and among everyone present, only Oscar looked utterly disappointed. Why was his sister's first word Mimi and not brother? Although Mabel felt there was really nothing to be sad about, she still instinctively wanted to comfort him. For the first time, she took the initiative to stretch out her hands, asking him to hold her. Fortunately, that action really did cheer Oscar up again. After that, the group entered the forest together to search for the divine beast. But the place was unnaturally quiet, not at all like somewhere living creatures existed. Just as they were preparing to leave, Mabel unexpectedly saw a faint gleam. Its whole body shone with a golden radiance, like a cute little cat. Just as the divine beast was getting closer and closer, Mabel suddenly sneezed. The divine beast instantly bristled and turned to run. And so this first outing came to a successful end. However, while the group was on their way back, they unexpectedly encountered the biological mother of the eldest prince, Duke Donovan. A pair of sharp green eyes made people instinctively reluctant to approach. Even Oscar, who was usually thick-skinned, was very afraid. This situation made Mabel unconsciously raise her guard as well. After all, she was the child born to her ex-husband and his next wife. She would definitely be treated as a thorn in the eye. But in reality, the Duchess did nothing. Even so, the two of them only finally breathed a sigh of relief after they had gone far away. At this moment, a sudden commotion came from not far away. Everyone's faces showed nervous and uneasy expressions. A group of knights held long swords and were surrounding a boy wearing a black cloak. The scene was complete chaos. Obviously, those knights were no match for the boy at all. Just then, their eyes met. The next second, the boy lost consciousness and collapsed directly onto the ground. It turned out that this boy's identity was far from simple. He was the strongest weapon of the enemy nation Dublin, known as the Demon of Dublin. In a recent battle, he had suddenly frozen in place, and that was how he had been captured successfully. And just now, on the way to the underground prison, he had suddenly lost control again and nearly caused a great fire. The aide-de-camp had an awful headache over it. If the Emperor learned of this, it would probably bring thunderous rage. But unexpectedly, After the emperor learned that the princess was safe and sound, he did not react too strongly. Instead, when he heard that Mabel had shouted the 2 words Mimi at the divine beast for the first time, he suddenly crushed the extremely valuable teacup in his hand. Then he threw aside a pile of urgent official business and rushed straight to Mabel's bedchamber. He proceeded to berate the servants completely unreasonably. Mabel knew what he intended, so in order to help the wet nurse out, she shouted again. Hearing his daughter speak for the first time, the emperor's eyes lit up with excitement, but at the same time, he felt a little regretful that her first word had not been daddy. And next, he actually made a bold decision. Bestowing the northern imperial forest upon a baby who was only 2 months old was already absurd enough. But the emperor was still not satisfied. He felt that the landscape design there was not even as good as the royal villa. So on the spot, he had the aide write it down. Bestow Poe's city together with the northern forest upon the princess. Mabel was completely speechless and no longer made any pointless struggle because the emperor before her was simply a crazy daughter-doting fanatic. Soon, another month passed. Today, priests from the Holy Kingdom came to visit. Although the emperor was extremely dissatisfied inwardly, it was not good for him to completely tear up relations. After all, they were called the gods' representatives, and wherever they went, they were considered honored guests. I heard you came to exchange knowledge on the ancient divine language. I hope you will study it seriously before leaving. The implied meaning was for them not to do anything unnecessary and to leave as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, the priests not only failed to understand what he meant, but even took the initiative to bring up Mabel. And they added the surname Winter, as instructed by the prophecy. The emperor said with a serious expression that he did not acknowledge this prophecy. Based on nothing but a vague prophecy, you want me to send such a young and fragile child to the Holy Kingdom? The priest merely smiled lightly. He took the late emperor's pendant from his robes. It turned out that back then, in order to ascend the throne smoothly, the late emperor had once received help from the Holy Kingdom and thus had left this pendant as a token. So the debt owed by the late emperor, are you saying I should repay it with my child? How could I possibly agree to such a thing? Seeing the situation, the priest did not continue to pester him. He merely proposed that he wished to pay his respects to Her Highness the Princess. Now that things had come to this point, the emperor could hardly refuse again, but he still added one sentence. You must keep a distance of 20 meters from Mabel, and the use of magic and divine power is strictly forbidden. If you dare pose even the slightest threat to Mabel, I will execute you on the spot. For the first time, the priests felt the emperor's pampering of the princess, and all of them could not help breaking into a cold sweat. At the same time, Mabel was getting ready to listen to Oscar tell a story. She had thought it would be some kind of fairy tale book. Unexpectedly, the moment he opened his mouth, it made people collapse on the spot. On the flaws of Bordeaux's doctrine advocated by Ager. He read it with great relish, but Mabel dissatisfiedly launched a pacifier attack at him. Only then did Oscar realize that his sister did not like this. Next time I'll bring a more interesting book. Just then, a burst of noise suddenly came from the doorway. The emperor walked in with the priests. So, this is Her Highness the Princess. With just one glance, Mabel felt a surge of turmoil inside. And the closer the priest got, the stronger her reaction became. Fortunately, the emperor stopped him in time. Mabel is very afraid of strangers. Let's leave it at that for today. The priest did not continue to pester them, only reminding him before leaving. Recently, Dublin's movements have been highly unusual, and they have even drawn close to the Holy Kingdom. If they are trying to retrieve the demon of Dublin, then it is very likely to affect the Emano Empire as well, so please stay especially vigilant. After saying this, he looked at Mabel beside him once more, then turned and left. As the figures of the priests disappeared, that uneasy feeling in Mabel's heart also dissipated in an instant. Clearly, there had not been the slightest hostility in the other party's eyes, yet they still gave people an indescribably strange feeling. That night, Mabel deliberately pretended to be asleep to fool the wet nurse into leaving. Then she began secretly practicing rolling over, but for a 3-month-old baby, this was still too difficult. Yet she wanted to learn to walk sooner, because the overly intense love from her father and brother made her truly uncomfortable. Though thinking this way was cruel, she still decided to grow up quickly and then leave this place. Thud. Just then, a series of thudding footsteps came from not far away. The one who came was the priest from daytime. You're awake. I've come to take you away, Your Highness. Mabel did not know what exactly this man wanted to do, but sneaking around in the middle of the night was surely no good. So all she could do was cry loudly and call for help. Seeing that the man was clearly flustered, Mabel cried even harder. Immediately, a series of banging sounds came from the door outside. There's no time. I have to take you away immediately. Seeing that the priest was about to reach his hand toward her, in her panic, Mabel actually managed to roll over. And at that exact moment, the emperor burst through the door. What did you do to my daughter? I did nothing. I did not even touch a single hair on Her Highness's head. Then why is she lying there on her stomach? Her Highness rolled over by herself. I swear it in the name of God. Mabel heard the sound of the emperor drawing his sword and feared that he might do something terrible. So she tried to roll over again to prove that what the priest said was true, but even after struggling for a long time, she still could not turn over. Unexpectedly, the emperor ground his teeth and said, "It was all because of you. Because of you, I miss seeing Mabel roll over for the first time." So that was where the problem lay. After everything was dealt with, the emperor muttered in a low voice, "I should gouge that fellow's eyes out." This shocked the entire order of knights. Although it was normal for the emperor to be angry, causing diplomatic friction with the Holy Kingdom would definitely be troublesome. With the resolve to die if necessary, the commander advised, "Your Majesty, I do not think this matter warrants the use of criminal punishment on the offender." "You do not think it warrants it?" Mabel cried. The moment that guy came near her, he scared her into tears. "I would like nothing more than to tear him limb from limb. Honestly, if Mabel had not been born, I really would have done it." The knights silently cheered. "Long live the princess. Since you oppose it so strongly, then I will spare his life for now and see how the Holy Kingdom reacts. But Mabel needs a personal guard. So which of you will volunteer?" At first glance, this seemed like an easy assignment that could let one avoid training, but in reality, it was a miserable job that could cost one's life at any moment, so everyone lowered their heads. Just as the emperor was about to get angry, a man pushed the door open and walked in. "I am willing to become Her Highness, the princess's guard." To everyone's surprise, it was the younger brother of the former empress who volunteered, and the emperor accepted. The next day, the two met for the first time. The man suddenly popped out with a cheerful grin. He startled Mabel. She even spat out her pacifier. "Oh my, even getting startled is this cute." Mabel only felt baffled and started flailing around on the bed. The man immediately became awkward. Could it be that he had already been disliked at their very first meeting? At that moment, the wet nurse pushed the door open and greeted the man. "Lord Donovan, you came so early." When Mabel heard that, she froze all over. "Isn't that the surname of the former empress's family?" The man chatted slickly with the wet nurse. "You are even more beautiful than before. Just thinking that I will be able to see you every day from now on makes me feel incomparably happy. Haha, your sweet talk is as smooth as ever." With Swordmaster Lord Donovan serving as the princess's guard, I can rest assured. Only then did Mabel sort out the situation. But how could the emperor be so at ease in trusting her to someone from the former empress's side? Acting familiar on their first meeting and casually flirting with the wet nurse at that, he was obviously a playboy. The man could clearly feel that Mabel did not like him, but the wet nurse thought that the little princess had become especially wary of strangers because she had nearly been abducted last night. Mabel knew the wet nurse had started blaming herself again, so she proactively reached out to be held, wanting to comfort her. "My lord, look, Her Highness is both kind and well-behaved." Mabel also cooperatively smiled at the man, and in an instant, she completely won him over. "I am certain that this is no ordinary princess. This is clearly an angel descended from heaven. The divine oracle really was true." Mabel was almost going crazy. Why was there another abnormal person? This kind of airhead person was actually her guard knight. The emperor really does hate me, doesn't he? After 3 months, she had finally begun to worry about her future. Just then, Oscar quietly came here. The instant he saw the man, the smile on his face vanished on the spot. "Uncle, Oscar, why are you here? Isn't this the time when you should be studying the art of kingship?" "I only came after finishing all the homework you left for me." "Is finishing your homework enough? Then who would still regard you as the heir to the empire? You truly disappoint me. Now hurry back and train." Seeing Oscar lower his head and turn to leave, Mabel could not bear to watch. She immediately put on an expression as if she were about to cry, and made as if to throw herself toward Oscar. She knew that only when he was with her could Oscar get a moment to breathe. So she glared angrily at the man and shouted loudly, "Mimi." The wet nurse hurriedly stepped forward to explain. "Her Highness is somewhat shy around strangers, so for the time being, please stand guard outside the bedroom. And Her Highness likes the eldest prince very much, so the eldest prince comes to visit every day, leaving the man with no choice." He could only let Oscar and the princess play together. Then he turned around and left with a dejected expression. And the moment he stepped out the door, he ran into his sister, Duke Donovan. "I heard you volunteered to become the princess's guard. So after seeing her with your own eyes, how do you feel?" The man said that in all his life, he had never seen such a lovable child. She was simply as adorable as an angel. The Duke revealed a meaningful expression. It made his younger brother completely unable to read her. Could it be that his sister disliked Her Highness the princess? Because in his view, his sister did not even like her own child. She had always been exceptionally strict with Oscar since childhood. She had even demanded that he, as Oscar's teacher, not be soft-hearted. That was why the warm and affectionate Uncle Oscar had in childhood had suddenly become incomparably strict. Lysandra was somewhat worried that his sister might harm the little princess in the future, but that was a matter for later. Right now, the most important thing was to find a way to keep the little princess from disliking him. Soon summer began. In her unchanging daily life, Mabel had already secretly learned how to crawl on her belly. Now she had also started eating a little solid food, and she was eagerly looking forward to growing up quickly. What exactly would all these delicacies taste like? After all, in her previous life, she had suffered so much that she had barely been able to afford food. And during these days, Lysandro still peeked from outside the door every day. For Oscar's happiness, Mabel always put on a very angry expression toward him. Although the man looked somewhat pitiful, for Oscar's sake, she absolutely could not soften her heart. She lay on the bed absent-mindedly in boredom. When the wet nurse noticed, she planned to take her for a walk by the lake. "If we go to the northern forest, we might even see the kitty you like." "No." Mabel seriously expressed in baby talk that she was not that obsessed with the divine beast. But the wet nurse became even more convinced that Mabel liked it very much. She no longer struggled pointlessly. Before she could speak, There was no way to clear up this misunderstanding. When the group came outside, the weather was already extremely hot. This was something one could not feel at all while staying in the temperature-controlled bedchamber. The wet nurse was afraid she would get sunburned and hurriedly opened an umbrella. Suddenly, she smelled the fragrance of flowers drifting over from nearby. She liked it so much. After all, in her previous life, she had never received flowers. At graduation ceremonies, she could only watch others holding flowers and taking pictures with their parents. Whenever she thought of her experiences in her previous life, she felt very sad. Just then, Xavier picked her up and prepared to go look for the divine beast. The two walked all the way into the depths of the forest. And sure enough, they saw Mimi. Although she had already seen it once, that fur glowing with golden light was still astonishing. After playing with Mimi for a while, Mabel was already sweating profusely from the heat, and Xavier decided to take her back to the lakeside. Come, let's say goodbye to Mimi. Mabel was extremely embarrassed, but looking at Xavier's grinning face, she could only go along with it and perfunctorily wave it off. Oh my, wonderful. The people around her always lavished praise over such trivial things, and Mabel was not used to it. The two were just about to walk far away, but in a daze, she heard the divine beast say, "You must come again." But clearly no one except her heard it, so she simply thought she had imagined it and did not take it to heart. After that, the scheming Mabel deliberately pointed around everywhere, making Xavier run around the lakeside. That way, Lysandro could only circle around from afar while secretly protecting them. Finally, Xavier collapsed from exhaustion. "Your Highness, shall we rest for a while first? All right?" While no one was paying attention to her, Mabel began secretly practicing crawling. Just as she crawled farther and farther away, she suddenly saw a black belt exposed in the grass. The curious child reached out and parted the grass to look. It turned out to be Dublin's demon. She was very puzzled. Why was the boy here? Had he escaped from prison? Seeing his face covered in blood, Mabel felt somewhat worried. She had not expected the Empire to use torture on a child. It was truly too much. Mabel had originally wanted to help wipe away the blood, but with her current body, she could only crawl a few steps at most. She could not even speak. Suddenly, the wet nurse noticed she had crawled far away and hurriedly called Xavier to carry her back. Mabel panicked because they absolutely could not let anyone discover the boy. So she grabbed the leaves on the ground and was about to hide him. But the boy abruptly opened his eyes. At the instant their eyes met, Mabel felt as if she were about to be drawn into the boy's red pupils. As Xavier drew closer and closer, Mabel could only hurry away from there and go back with them. It was the only thing she could do. She only hoped the boy would remain safe and sound. In fact, the boy had been conscious the whole time. Everything that had happened before had felt like a dream, a very, very long dream. In that dream, he had been like a walking corpse. He had been completely unable to control himself. He had only slaughtered cruelly, without distinguishing friend from foe. By the time he regained consciousness again, he had already been locked in the dungeon. So, he used magic power to break through the seal. After knocking out the guards, he successfully escaped from prison. All this time, he had been in a hazy, muddled state, and today was the first time he had felt this kind of true clarity. So he decided to lie here and rest for a while. Before long, his body would heal on its own. And when Mabel had appeared just now, without opening his eyes, he had thought it was only a little rabbit. It posed no threat to him and would probably leave on its own after a while. But a long time passed, and just as he was about to drive Mabel away, one leaf after another fell onto his face. What came into view were those blue eyes, just like when he had seen them from afar last time. He became conscious again, and even the restraints inside his body began to loosen. What exactly was this child's identity that she possessed such powerful magic? That night after returning, Mabel came down with a high fever. "Your Highness, you may have gotten caught in the rain on the way back," but after returning, she had immediately bathed and changed clothes. So at first they thought they were simply overreacting. Unexpectedly, she really had caught a cold in the height of summer. This made the entire imperial palace tense, especially the emperor, who was beside himself with worry. He felt that a child so young would surely suffer terribly even from just a cold. If only he could suffer in her place. Although the palace physician said that after taking fever medicine, she would get better very quickly. The emperor still could not put his mind at ease. Just then, an aide flung the door open in a great rush and shouted, "Your Majesty, this is bad. I have something to report to you." The emperor was on the verge of exploding on the spot. How dare he be so loud and disturb Mabel's rest? Although the aide also knew things were bad, the matter was serious and had to be reported immediately. Dublin's demon has escaped from prison. Originally, the magic seal there was extremely difficult to break free from, but the demon stupefied the guards and escaped. They tracked the blood trail all the way to the northern forest, and after that, the trail disappeared. Hearing this, the emperor remembered that the place where Mabel had gone for a walk today was exactly there, and he was instantly incomparably relieved that his daughter had not encountered the demon. What he did not know, however, was that it was Mabel who had covered for the other party. That was why the boy had not been discovered. Seal the city gates immediately. Without permission, no one is allowed to enter or leave. At the same time, deploy 20 times the usual guard force to stand watch at Mabel's palace, and launch a search centered on the northern forest where the trail disappeared. After arranging everything, the emperor had everyone leave the room. He remained there quietly by Mabel's side. In truth, He knew that children inevitably encountered such situations while growing up, but he still felt deeply frustrated. Even though he ruled the nation with the widest territory on the continent, he still could not protect the person most important to him. He thought of his wife, Senna. He thought of the moment during childbirth when she had suffered a difficult labor and cried, begging that the child be saved no matter what. During these days, it was not as if he had never felt regret, but precisely because of that, he wanted even more to protect Mabel well and let this child grow up safely. But what had happened today made him feel a deep helplessness and even gave rise to thoughts of giving up. Just then, Mabel's little hand accidentally touched him. This abruptly brought him back to his senses and made him pull himself together once more. I am her father, so I will definitely protect you. At that moment, burning with fever, Mabel hazily returned to her previous life. While sick, she forced herself to hold on and dug out the medicine at home that had long since expired. Because she did not even have water, she could only endure the pain and forcibly swallow the medicine dry. She could not understand why she had never once been cared for by parents. Why the eyes of outsiders looking at her were always filled with pity as well, yet no one could give her an answer. In her daze, she heard the Emperor's voice. She felt someone cooling her down physically and feeding her medicine and gently stroking her. Mabel took all of it as a dream because she was not supposed to have a father. But having felt warmth for the first time, she still clung to the feeling with all her heart. She only hoped this dream could last a little longer, just a little longer. The next day, Mabel woke from her sleep. Logically, after a bad cold, she should have been burning up all over and feeling dizzy. But now she felt refreshed and not uncomfortable at all. However, when she turned over, she found the Emperor sitting beside her, asleep. She was very confused. Why would the Emperor be here at this hour? The next second, he smiled and gently touched her forehead. Then, he wiped the sweat from her brow. Looking at the Emperor's exhausted face, Mabel finally understood that the one who had taken care of her last night was the Emperor. And was it not real? If it was the Emperor who had cared for her last night, then it was not a dream, but everything that had truly happened. After learning the truth, Mabel burst into tears on the spot. The Emperor thought she was still feeling unwell, so he gently picked her up and softly comforted her. Mabel could hardly believe that she, too, was worthy of being loved like this. And because she had always felt that people's hearts were fickle, she still remained doubtful of everything before her. From then on, the Emperor became excessively nervous about her. The wind chime might fall, so it could not be hung up. The toys might scratch her, so she could not play with them. Even the stuffed toys were confiscated. Thanks to the Emperor, Mabel was now even more bored than before. Fortunately, Oscar came. Mabel immediately became wary of Lysandro. She kept launching attacks with the limited vocabulary she had. Oscar smiled and patiently explained, "Don't dislike Uncle so much. He used to play with me a lot too. It was only after he became my swordsmanship teacher that he suddenly became strict. He's not a bad person." Mabel angrily shoved Oscar. She had obviously driven Lysandro out for his sake, yet he was actually speaking up for Lysandro. Oscar noticed his sister's dissatisfaction, so he quickly changed the subject and had someone bring in today's homework. The board Mabel was instantly interested and leaned forward to flip through it casually, but she found that she could not understand any of it. She could only barely look at the illustrations above. Perhaps it would be nice to first learn a little about the map of this continent. So she pointed at the various countries and asked Oscar where they were. Unexpectedly, Oscar was basically a genius. He had long since memorized the entire map perfectly. But when she pointed to the country beside it whose territory was second only to the Empire's, Oscar's expression changed instantly. It turned out that it was the Dublin Empire, and the relationship between the two countries had always been very poor. Dublin was not only watching them like a tiger eyeing its prey, but had even launched quite a few wars. Recently, there had been a small-scale conflict at the border, and our side was completely wiped out. Even more terrifying, the other side had only one person. Right after that, Mabel was listening in fascination, but Oscar suddenly laughed at himself and said, "Why am I even telling you this now? You can't understand it anyway." Mabel, who still could not speak, truly felt like someone suffering in silence. But Oscar did not notice at all, and merely kept smiling as he played childish games with Mabel. Very soon, it was the 8th month since she had come to this world, because Mabel always stayed motionless. The wet nurse was very worried. She even invited a doctor to examine her carefully, but the final conclusion was that she was very healthy and had no problems at all. And once night came, Mabel would begin her secret training plan. Today, she planned to challenge herself by standing. She gripped the railing tightly. While recalling the feeling of walking freely in her previous life, she used every ounce of strength she had. After a great deal of effort, she actually managed to stand up. However, now is not the time to be happy. Step forward. Take the first step that belongs to you after being reborn. But what she did not know was that her covert operation was about to be exposed. At the same time, the Emperor had already arrived at the corridor outside the palace. He planned to take one look at his daughter sleeping soundly before leaving. The moment he pushed the door open, he froze completely. Even the lamp in his hand fell to the ground. How could one explain that a child who originally could at most only crawl had suddenly grabbed the railing and started walking? Just as she was frantically brainstorming, the Emperor excitedly shouted, "Amazing! My daughter is simply a genius. This is incredible." After saying that, he pounced toward his daughter and kissed her fiercely over and over like a woodpecker. Mabel's forehead was practically about to smoke from all the kisses. To commemorate your successfully learning how to walk, I must give you a gift. I've decided. I'll give you the Duchy of Vistant. The land there is fertile, and it is also a famous vacation destination throughout the country. Mabel was utterly stunned. Was he not giving her an apple, but a duchy? At the meeting the next day, a minister reported to the emperor that the demon from Dublin had escaped back to the border, and that all the men our side had sent out had been defeated. They had thought they would be met with thunderous fury. Unexpectedly, not only was the emperor not angry, but he even looked to be in an extremely good mood. Without even thinking, it was obvious that it had to be because of the little princess. Your Majesty, has something happy happened? You seem to be in a very good mood. At that, the emperor immediately looked full of pride. Mabel has learned to walk. She's simply a genius. So I have decided to bestow the Duchy of Vistant upon her. Everyone present was shocked. That was a reward His Majesty the Emperor had received back when he was still the crown prince. It was a key region politically, geographically, and diplomatically. In a few more months, it would be the little princess's first birthday. It was hard to imagine what kind of grand first birthday celebration would be held then. What exactly this princess, who had never shown herself, would be like. After the meeting ended, the emperor set down the documents awaiting processing and impatiently headed toward his daughter's room. The next second, however, he was stopped by Marquis Gardenia. Your Majesty. The next second, however, he was stopped by Marquis Gardenia. Now, you should let me see Her Highness the Princess, shouldn't you? Marquis Gardenia requests an audience with his own granddaughter. This made the emperor very unhappy, because ever since Mabel was born, he had made a fuss for 3 months straight, and only after great difficulty had he calmed down a little, yet now he was at it again. 8 months have already passed. Surely you should let me see her now, shouldn't you? Mabel is still too young, but you just said yourself that she already knows how to walk. Hearing that, the emperor practically wanted to slap his just now smug self. And besides, Her Highness the Princess is the heir of the Gardenia family. Is she not? What a headache. One after another, they all wanted to snatch away his precious daughter. Absolutely not. But if he kept refusing without any reason like this, that would not work either. Perhaps letting him see her once would instead save a lot of trouble. I will arrange a specific visiting date for you. Only then did the Marquis leave in satisfaction. Whenever the Emperor saw Gardenia, he would think of how he had been obstructed in every possible way when he sought Senna's hand in marriage back then. No matter how he looked at it, the man was an unpleasant old fellow. A week quickly passed. The attendants tirelessly supported Mabel as she practiced walking. The two of them kept taking turns back and forth. In the end, however, they all collapsed to the floor from exhaustion. Suddenly, the wet nurse's stern scolding came from behind. Mabel knew that something important must have happened for the wet nurse to get angry over matters of attire. She turned her head and saw that behind the wet nurse stood an old man she had never seen before. With a kindly face and a smile, he introduced himself to Mabel. With a kindly face and a smile, he introduced himself to Mabel. I am your Highness's grandfather. Though startled, Mabel still could not help quietly murmuring, Grandpa. This instantly brought tears to Marquis Gardenia's eyes, moving him beyond measure. The emperor was grinding his teeth as he stared fixedly at the doorway. It was as though he would charge out directly the next second. How could the aide possibly fail to understand what the emperor was thinking? Rather than this, it would be better to go take a look and then come back to handle official business. If you are worried, Your Majesty, why not go and take a look? No, that would make me look far too much like a doting father. In fact, everyone thought so, but the aide simply did not dare say it. He could only tell an obvious lie and try to persuade the emperor to go over there. But unexpectedly, the emperor had not planned to handle official business in the first place. He directly took the excuse offered to him and strode quickly out of the room. At this time, the Marquis had only just stopped crying, yet he turned around and began accusing the emperor of cruelty. According to the Marquis, Senna had been the most beautiful and most popular person in the empire, and the current emperor, back when he was still crown prince, had been savage and willful, treating human life as worthless. He had been thrown onto the battlefield by the late emperor and left to fend for himself, and was an emperor with an extremely poor reputation. Later, not only did he propose to Senna immediately after his divorce, he even refused to let him see his own granddaughter, which was simply going too far. Hearing these words, Mabel could not help but feel moved. Although she had not truly regarded the Marquis as her grandfather yet, she really was his only blood relative left in this world. So, as if to comfort him, she gently patted the Marquis's hand and softly called him Grandpa. Just then, the emperor pushed the door open and entered. The suffocating tension between father-in-law and son-in-law instantly erupted. Anyone who got involved would definitely be unlucky. Caught in the middle, Mabel felt very troubled, so she cast a pleading look toward the wet nurse, wanting to escape from here as quickly as possible. Unexpectedly, she casually grabbed the railing beside her and jumped down directly. The scene instantly fell into terrifying silence. Mabel suddenly realized that it was her agile movement that had stunned them. However, the very next second, the two of them started arguing again, continuing their meaningless standoff. Looking at the two hands stretched out toward her, Mabel felt immense pressure. No matter which one she chose, something bad would happen. So she decided to simply burst into tears decisively, and she should be able to avoid it that way. Just as she was trying hard to work up the emotion, Oscar came charging in at full speed. And Mabel also knew that a better solution had arrived. So she quickly reached out her hands and asked Oscar for help. At last, a crisis was resolved. The priest, who had been reluctantly released and permanently banned from entering the Manhwa Empire, had already returned to the Holy Kingdom. He had originally thought that, having failed to bring back the seed of God, he would definitely receive severe punishment. Unexpectedly, the Divine King had not placed much hope in him at all. Sending him there had merely been to test things out, to see whether the Enoman Empire had properly protected the seed of God. And at that very moment, a sinister plan quietly began to form. Several weeks passed, and Mabel, who had always been taciturn, suddenly began crying and fussing. The deeply worried wet nurse took one look, then could not help laughing out loud. This shocked Mabel to her core. The person she trusted most was clearly the wet nurse. She was already feeling this miserable, yet the wet nurse could still laugh. This was truly too disappointing. Suddenly, the wet nurse said, "Your Highness is crying because her teeth hurt. Our little princess is about to start teething." Mabel was overjoyed. Teething meant that before long she would be able to speak. This news will surely reach His Majesty's ears very soon, so we must prepare to welcome him. Mabel still felt it was unlikely. The next second, the Emperor made a dazzling entrance. "My precious daughter is finally teething. This is wonderful news. Let me think. What gift should I give you this time?" To stop the Emperor from saying something outrageous again, Mabel could only speak up herself, indicating that simple biscuits would be fine. So she kept repeating, "Bye-bye." The Emperor thought for 0.1 seconds, then happily declared that he would send the capital's head chef over here. Mabel was practically furious, roaring inwardly, "I want biscuits, not a person." Not long afterward, the Emperor received a letter from the Holy Kingdom. The letter stated that on Mabel's first birthday, the Divine King would personally attend to offer congratulations. The Emperor angrily tore the letter to pieces. Because this was basically a declaration of war sent by the Holy Kingdom, he would never allow anyone to harm his daughter. At that moment, he already had an idea. So he wrote a reply, welcoming the Divine King's personal visit. There are still 2 months before the banquet, and I am already looking forward to that day. The little princess finally welcomed her first birthday banquet. Today was the first time she saw what she looked like, and she was unbelievably surprised. She had never expected that in this life she would actually be this cute. She felt that she could somewhat understand why they had always made such a fuss before. She curiously looked herself up and down, her pink hair, and those sapphire blue eyes just like the Emperor's, as well as those 4 tiny teeth. All of it felt novel to her. At this time, the wet nurse and the others were also making preparations in an orderly but tense manner. "This is the dress prepared for your Highness today. Isn't it very beautiful?" Mabel's heart was instantly struck. She could hardly believe that she, who in her previous life had not even been able to eat her fill, could in this life wear such a beautiful and gorgeous dress. After the wet nurse dressed her up, Mabel finally finished getting changed. Everyone found her unbearably adorable. Just then, the Emperor pushed the door open and entered. He happily scooped his daughter up in one arm, and with a smile all over his face, wished her a happy birthday. A delayed realization made Mabel's heart tremble. This was the first time anyone had ever said those words to her. When she was little, no one had ever celebrated her birthday. Even after growing up, she had always spent her birthdays alone. So this is what it feels like to receive blessings. Just then, the aide informed the 2 of them that it was time to enter. Mabel was very nervous. After all, from birth until now, she had seen fewer than 10 people, and outside this door, countless eyes would be staring at her. The Emperor noticed that something was off about her, and softly comforted her. "There is nothing frightening here. They are there to please you, not for you to please them." Thanks to the Emperor, Mabel was so frightened that she directly lost all strength. Next, please welcome His Majesty the Emperor and Princess Mabel Gardenia. After a round of applause, the hall instantly fell silent. As she looked at the chair beside the throne, Mabel already felt enormous pressure, but unexpectedly, the Emperor directly placed her on the throne. Everyone present was dumbfounded, but the Emperor began talking endlessly about his daughter, saying what a genius she was. Although the family all deeply agreed, Mabel felt nothing but unbearable embarrassment and wished she could immediately dig a hole and crawl into it. As the Emperor announced the start of the banquet, most people began enjoying the banquet on their own. And Oscar also walked toward his dear younger sister with a smile on his face. Brother Oscar walked over with a smile and wished her a happy birthday. And, while at it, exposed the Emperor's childish act of ordering that no one was allowed to congratulate Mabel before he did. Seeing that the angry Emperor was about to discipline Oscar, unexpectedly Oscar boldly ignored him outright. He took out the birthday gift he had carefully prepared, a delicate and gorgeous emerald necklace. "This is the first gift I am giving you." And those things piled up over there are all gifts for you as well. Looking at that heap of gifts, Mabel instantly felt even more pressure. After all, she did not even know what the gift givers looked like. And they surely were not simply giving gifts out of pure goodwill either. Seeing his daughter's reaction, the Emperor thought she was disappointed because there were too few gifts. But you needn't feel sad, because the gift your father has prepared for you will be enough to amaze everyone." He swiftly stood up and stared at the people from the Holy Kingdom as he said, "On the occasion of the princess's first important day in life, I hereby announce that I am officially passing the throne to Mabel Gardenia." Mabel was so shocked that her face turned green, and the reactions of everyone present were all different, smiling, but strangely, although the king of the Holy Kingdom had thereby lost his reason to take back the seed of God, he still revealed an inexplicable smile. The emperor was extremely pleased with himself because he had already waited a long time for this moment. It turned out that beginning 2 months ago, the emperor had already started putting this plan into action. First was Marquis Gardenia. Originally, the Marquis had wanted Mabel to become the heir of the family, but after hearing that the Holy Kingdom wanted to take away his precious granddaughter, he immediately agreed to the emperor's proposal. Then came Crown Prince Oscar. Father and son sat down for a heartfelt talk for the first time in a long while, and the emperor asked him whether he truly wanted to become emperor. After receiving an ambiguous answer, the emperor stated frankly that he wanted to pass the throne to Mabel. Only in this way would the Holy Kingdom have no reason to take her away. But if you are unwilling, I will think of another way. I agree. As long as Mabel is not put in danger, I do not care what happens to me. And if Mabel becomes emperor, then I will become her guardian knight. The emperor had never imagined that Oscar would cherish Mabel so deeply. But what made the emperor even more unable to believe it was Duke Donovan, the former empress's father. He even agreed directly without doing anything at all. Moreover, it turned out that Duke Donovan, who seemed not to care much about his son, had not only been silently keeping track of his situation all along, but was also the person who understood Oscar best. He knew that Oscar had strong learning ability, but that his talent in swordsmanship was even more outstanding. This was something the emperor had never expected no matter what. After settling these matters, the last were the court ministers. Originally full of complaints, once they learned that government affairs would still be handled by His Majesty the Emperor and only nominally handed over to Her Highness the Princess, they did not dare say much more. Time returned to the day of the banquet. The Emperor was staring at the King of the Holy Kingdom with a face full of provocation. The scene instantly erupted in an uproar. Aside from the few people who knew the truth, all the other guests panicked. At the same time, the people of the Holy Kingdom also panicked because they knew very clearly that in this way, they had lost their reason to bring back the seed of God. However, through this meeting, the Divine King had already clearly sensed that a powerful holy force lay hidden within Mabel's body, and once the time was ripe, it would awaken on its own. So there was no need to waste energy on this at all. He stared at Mabel and murmured to himself in a low voice, as if no one else were present. The seed of God will eventually take over this body. In the end, you will still come looking for me, because the power you possess is enough to drive the people around you mad. At this moment, the Emperor on the stage was frowning in displeasure. He had originally thought that the Holy Nation would directly seize her, so the matter could be escalated to the national level, but unexpectedly, they remained so calm. But that did not really matter, as long as Mabel was safe. Deep down, the Emperor believed that Mabel was still too young to understand such complicated matters, so he had not asked for her opinion in advance. Unexpectedly, Mabel broke down and burst into tears on the spot. She had never imagined that the Emperor could be this outrageous. At the same time, she also felt sorry for Oscar. He had clearly been studying hard every day to inherit the throne in the future, yet now it was taken away from him just because someone said so. The Emperor had no choice but to have the nurse take her back first, and Mabel cried sadly for the entire day. So much so that when she woke up the next day, her eyelids were swollen. She really could not understand why the Emperor had done this. Could it be because grandfather had treated her as the heir? And because the Emperor did not get along with grandfather, that was why he had done this. But when it was announced yesterday, those three had all been very calm. Then there was only one truth. They had discussed it beforehand. Thinking of this, Mabel broke down once again. So she had been the only one kept in the dark. The two people in the room instantly panicked, having no idea what had happened. They could only hold her and keep making guesses. At this moment, Mabel also realized something. If she was going to get angry, she should go find the real person responsible for this. So she tried hard to open her mouth and call for Papa, though the pronunciation came out as Baba, but it was already enough for people to understand. The maid who understood excitedly carried Mabel to go find the Emperor. When the two arrived at the entrance of the dining hall, Mabel twisted her body in dissatisfaction, indicating that she wanted to get down and walk by herself. She even insisted on walking on her own so she could look a bit more imposing. However, the moment she wobbled along while calling out Papa, she instantly conquered the Emperor. The moment she called out Papa, she instantly conquered the Emperor. She was his baby daughter with that sweet, childish voice. Who could possibly not love her? Although the truth was exactly the opposite. You missed Papa, so that is why you came here, right? Although Mabel kept waving her little fists, the Emperor did not feel a thing at all. Instead, Mabel herself hurt terribly. The Emperor held his daughter, so moved that his eyes were almost red. However, Mabel only grew even angrier. She only hated that she was still too young, let alone taking revenge. She could not even count as scratching an itch. The delighted Emperor brought over ice cream as a reward for his precious daughter. The angry Mabel was instantly bought over. Slurp. Suddenly, She remembered the main reason she had come here, so she angrily swung her little fist again and brought it down. She even loudly shouted that she hated Baba. After saying that, she turned around and left in a huff. The emperor was petrified on the spot and asked the aide in disbelief what exactly he had just heard. From that moment on, whenever the emperor came to visit, Mabel would cry and make a fuss, telling him to go away. This kind of behavior deeply pierced the emperor's heart, and Lysandro, who clearly had no sense of self-preservation, actually opened his mouth to tease him. "Welcome, your majesty, to the Mabel Hates Club." That infuriated the emperor tremendously, and so a long time passed. On this day, Oscar came to visit. Mabel simply stared at him like that, her heart full of guilt, because during this time, Oscar had been tormented by lessons all for the sake of the throne. But now, with just a single sentence from the emperor, all of his past efforts had been denied. Mabel sincerely said she was sorry, but Oscar did not understand. So she continued and said that she hated the emperor. "Do you mean you hate Father Emperor?" Mabel shook her head. "Then do you mean that you do not want to become emperor?" Oscar fell silent. This made Mabel very sad, and she thought he must be heartbroken. But the next second, Oscar happily jumped up, because for his little sister to understand what he said at such a young age, she was simply a genius. He pulled Mabel into his arms and comforted her softly. "So you also do not want to become emperor, but there is nothing we can do about it because this is a kind of protection for you. You do not need to feel sorry for me. Actually, I do not want to become emperor either. On the contrary, being able to help you by your side makes me feel very happy. If there is a chance in the future, I will explain it to you." The emperor received news that a battle over mining rights had broken out in the south, and the report also mentioned Duke Javier, who had gone to the southern mines to investigate. He just so happened to be on his way back, and such a coincidence made the emperor suspect that the duke was involved as well. Unfortunately, that old fox never dirted his own hands. Instead, he always used other nobles, causing them to walk toward ruin. The emperor's anger made everyone present not even dare to breathe loudly, and the emperor was also suddenly overcome with anxiety and rage. Everyone present became extremely nervous, but unexpectedly, he muttered in a low voice, "I need Mabel." Everyone's expressions immediately changed from worry to confusion. The aide uneasily confirmed it again and again. Although the emperor irritably told him to shut up, he still felt a bit of sympathy for this hot-tempered majesty. After all, he had poured out a heart full of affection, yet was never welcomed by his daughter. The emperor instantly became grim and terrifying, looking as if he wanted to drag him out and have him beheaded on the spot. In order to save his life, he hurriedly revealed some information. Lately, the princess went out for a walk every day. As soon as the emperor heard this, his expression instantly softened. He grabbed his coat and rushed out the door. However, after what had happened some time ago, he only dared to look at his daughter from afar. Not only had she grown a little taller, even her hair had grown 4 millimeters longer. But he still never knew why his daughter had suddenly started hating him. It was truly depressing and made his mood especially irritable. While playing, Mabel suddenly felt that someone was watching her. But when she turned her head, there was already no trace of anyone. The emperor had just left to meet the person in charge of the coronation ceremony. At that moment, the divine beast suddenly appeared. With a whoosh, it jumped onto Mabel, startling her badly. It was a feeling that was both excited and nervous. Oscar smiled and told his little sister to pet the divine beast and praise it while she was at it. Mabel also did as told in her babyish voice. Unexpectedly, she suddenly heard an impatient voice. Mabel looked everywhere for the source of the voice, even thinking she had misheard. Unexpectedly, that voice rang out again. "Where are you looking? Am I not right here?" Only then did Mabel realize that the one talking to her was actually the divine beast. This was simply too unbelievable. The divine beast stared at the cat food in front of it and kicked it unhappily, emphasizing once again that it was not a cat. "I am a divine messenger born to assist you. Now that you understand, get me something humans can eat." Mabel's eyes were filled with suspicion, which made the divine beast stamp its feet in anger. But just then, the nurse suddenly appeared, putting an end to today's walk. Because today they needed to measure the dress for the coronation ceremony, so they would be very busy, leaving behind only the divine beast's miserable cries. On the way back, the two unexpectedly ran into each other. Mabel heard that the emperor had fainted during the last meeting. She wondered whether his health had gotten any better. However, the emperor turned his head away first. In Mabel's heart, it felt like there was a little sadness. She could not help but mock herself. This was only normal. After all, no parents would like a child like her who never smiled and would not even allow herself to be held. Only then did she forcefully hold back the urge to run over. She only hoped that the two of them could clear up the misunderstanding soon. And so, another month passed. While she was still asleep, she suddenly heard a noisy commotion by her ear. After opening her eyes, she found that she was not in her room. And what came into view was the emperor, whom she had not seen for a long time. Since her birthday, the two of them had not seen each other for a whole month. Why was he dressed so formally? Mabel looked around in confusion and discovered a group of noble ministers standing in front of her. There was also a crown encrusted with diamonds placed beside them. Could this be the coronation ceremony for inheriting the throne? She became furious at once. She clearly did not want to be emperor, so why were they arranging someone else's life so casually? They saw Mabel move her short little legs and charge over at high speed. With extremely unclear pronunciation, she said, "Emperor, I do not want this." Then she kicked over the stool holding the crown. Even so, she still felt it was not enough to vent her anger. She directly kicked the crown at her feet far away as well. Everyone present was stunned. Mabel also suddenly felt that maybe she had gone too far. But unexpectedly, a round of applause actually broke out. "Your Highness the Princess is indeed as outstanding as the rumors say." The Emperor also praised his daughter proudly and gently placed the newly custom-made crown on her head. Sure enough, a fitting crown really should be custom-made for the new emperor. "Ascend the throne." Everyone shouted loudly, congratulating His Majesty the Emperor on ascending the throne. But Mabel felt that this country had already lost all hope. They had actually really made such a small child emperor. She returned to her new room. It turned out that the Emperor's aide had also come here, saying that he was here to assist her. Mabel was horrified and said, "Dream on." But the aide thought she had said rest. "Of course, Your Majesty can rest today. It will be fine to start handling state affairs from tomorrow." The baby was speechless. The baby was shocked. "All the ministers will come pay their respects to you at tomorrow's court meeting. So see you the day after tomorrow." Mabel was irritated to the extreme. She could not understand how they could let such a small child handle state affairs. Then destruction would only be a matter of time. At that moment, Mabel suddenly curled her lips into a wicked smile, and one bad idea after another emerged in her mind. Since this country was destined to fall anyway, then let me destroy it with my own hands. Then we will see whether you still agree with letting me sit on this throne. Today was Mabel's first meeting after ascending the throne. The ministers present had long since been unable to wait any longer. Everyone was filled with anticipation, wanting to see the adorable little Majesty personally preside over the meeting. And as her grandfather, Marquis Gardenia was even more gratified because he could finally see his granddaughter without restrictions. Just then, the villainous Duke Javier walked in. The two archenemies immediately began a confrontation without smoke, instantly frightening the others behind them so badly that they trembled. Fortunately, Mabel came in at that moment. That adorable appearance instantly captured the hearts of everyone present. The former Tyrant Este. How exactly had he given birth to such a soft and adorable daughter? But the next second, the tyrant they were talking about also entered right after her. "Everyone, it seems you have forgotten to bow." A wave of disappointment surged through the crowd, as their hope that the former emperor would not attend the meeting was completely shattered. Very soon, the meeting began, and Mabel, unsurprisingly, became a mere tool. And she also heard about the recent situation concerning the demon Dublin. Had she known he would die, she should not have helped cover for him that day. But looking at how he had been, it had been impossible for her to simply ignore him. The next case was Viscount Vincent's wife's divorce petition. It turned out that the Viscount had brought his lover into the estate and driven Viscountess Vincent to a side residence. As a result, the pregnant Viscountess fell from a long neglected staircase and miscarried on the spot. Not only did the Viscount show no remorse, he even gave the illegitimate son born to his lover the Vincent surname. Upon hearing this, both father and daughter gritted their teeth in anger. He was simply trash, a disgrace to humanity. Mabel was so angry that she kept pounding the table, repeatedly saying, "Death penalty." But everyone present looked completely bewildered. Finally, after a difficult round of interpretation, one minister at last got it right. His little Majesty said death penalty. Mabel was overjoyed and nodded rapidly, and repeated her decision once again. Everyone present immediately burst into laughter. Even Marquis Gardenia changed from his usual self. Mabel became furious at once. Why was everyone teasing her? In the end, to make sure Lady Vincent's divorce petition would pass, she hurriedly stamped it with the seal. After returning, the more Mabel thought about it, the angrier she became, and she wildly pounded the bed. Just then, a boy suddenly appeared and even greeted Mabel on his own initiative. Seeing this, Oscar directly shoved the person away. Then he pulled Mabel into his arms and soothed her gently, afraid that she had been frightened. The boy was stunned on the spot. Was the person before him really Oscar? He was completely different from usual. "Hello, little darling, my name is Enrique, and I am your brother's friend." The next second, Oscar directly drew his sword at him. "How dare you? Why have you not bowed to Her Majesty?" The boy immediately knelt down and apologized for his disrespect. Mabel quickly placed her hand on his head and pardoned his crime. Oscar immediately shouted, "Mabel, how can you do that? I want my head patted too." As a result, the scene turned into this bizarre sight. The one-year-old little emperor was finally ready to make a move against that old fox everyone feared. Under the dark and heavy sky, Dublin's demon had rarely regained his clarity. Even he himself did not know how long he had lost control again today. It turned out he had been cursed. And not only was his body immortal, even his mind had been under constant control. He truly wanted to break free from this mire and spread his wings again like an eagle, soaring high. Suddenly, he thought of Mabel, and it seemed that from the moment their eyes met, his whole being had awakened. He could not help but murmur in a low voice, "Perhaps that child can lend me a hand and grant me the death I have long awaited." For months passed quickly. Before she knew it, Mabel had already been emperor for 4 months. During this time, she changed the menu from her weaning period diet and finally got to eat the royal family's specially prepared delicacies from land and sea. It had to be said, The taste was truly wonderful, and now she finally understood why the emperor had passed the throne to her. All of this was to prevent the holy nation from taking her away in the name of the seed of God. Why would the emperor go this far for her? And even though her attitude toward him was not good, he still wore that smiling expression and reached out his hand to her with a smile. But Mabel still did not give him a pleasant look. As soon as she turned her head, she went straight into the aide's arms to hide, because she felt that one thing was one thing, and pushing her onto the throne without saying anything was unacceptable. Soon, today's meeting began, and the ministers all smiled as they praised how cuter her hairstyle looked today. Mabel puffed up angrily and told them to shut up in her little baby voice. Only then did they finally get to the main topic. This case concerned the verdict on Count Sequira's embezzlement charges. The villain Javier immediately stepped forward and stated that he intended to stand on the side of that embezzling count. The ministers felt that this was obviously unreasonable, but he directly spoke in a mocking tone. "Are you opposing my suggestion?" In an instant, all the ministers shut their mouths. Only Gardenia still dared to continue confronting him. The Count embezzled all the funds for the expansion outside the city. Is that still not enough to convict him? But is there conclusive evidence for this matter? That overbearing attitude made Mabel extremely displeased. That old fox always wore a crafty smile while cutting off others' words, and every judgment depended entirely on his own will. How on earth did he produce a son like Enrique? It turned out that the reason Javier could be so arrogant was entirely because he held the magic crystal mines in his hands. After all, in this world, magic crystals were extremely expensive, and their output was also very scarce. Although the royal family still had quite a lot in stock, it would soon be sold out. Looking at the Duke's haughty expression, Mabel smiled. Perhaps it was time for her to make her move. As it turned out, on a certain night not long ago, Mabel, who was sleeping, was suddenly awakened by a burst of intense discussion. But when she got up and looked around, she did not find anyone at all. She had thought it was the attendants arguing outside, but to her surprise, when she pushed open the window, there were actually 2 owls outside. Terrified, Mabel went to find the divine beast first thing in the morning and explained to it that she could hear animals talking. The divine beast lazily replied that this was because Mabel's power had begun to awaken. From now on, she would be able to speak with all living creatures in this world, because you are chosen by God, and I was born precisely to help you. I know your soul is certainly not as young as this body. Although I still cannot explain everything clearly now, everything has a reason, and as for the truth behind it, you will need to find it yourself. Time returned to the court meeting, and Mabel smiled faintly. This ability was really quite useful. It just so happened to be perfect for dealing with the old fox in front of her. A long time passed, and on this day, the aide was handling official affairs. But he discovered that the royal family's reserve of magic crystals was not abundant, and it would not be long before they were sold out. At that time, Duke Javier would only become even more unrestrained. So what should they do? Just then, a childish voice suddenly rang out. "Gustav, I'm here." Mabel deliberately complained that it was too messy here, and while speaking, she pretended to help tidy up. How could the aide possibly let her do it herself? So he quickly stood up from his seat. Mabel immediately ran over. She picked up the ink and, smiling brightly, asked a question she already knew the answer to. The aide instantly felt that something terrible was about to happen. Sure enough, in the next second, the ink spilled everywhere, instantly staining most of the documents black. Working man Gustav was heartbroken all over, but he could only silently go fetch something to wipe it up. Although Mabel also felt sorry, only by doing this could she secure this time alone. She hurriedly took out the document she had prepared long ago from her bag. This was the paperwork regarding the purchase of the Roguewell mine in the southwestern region. Although the handwriting was crooked and messy, it was enough for people to understand. Now, as long as the Emperor's seal was stamped on it, it would take effect immediately. She took the seal from the side and firmly stamped it onto the document. The Emperor happily asked Mabel whether she had come specially to see him, but his daughter said that she had come to see the aide. A wave of jealousy instantly rose in the Emperor's heart. Demotion, he must be demoted. The aide happened to bring over Mabel's rabbit doll. The warm and harmonious scene between the two made the Emperor even more displeased, and seeing that things were about to develop in an uncontrollable direction, Mabel quickly gave her doll to him as a gift. The old father's heart melted on the spot. After all, this was the first gift his precious daughter had given him, and the two of them also took the chance to slip away quickly and leave this troublesome place. The 1-year-old little emperor used only one move and easily solved one of the royal family's major troubles. Just now, Mabel had arranged for the mine purchase document she had prepared in advance to be mixed in with the daily approval files. When the aide saw it, he was completely shocked, because the Roguewell mine in the southwest was a notoriously low-quality iron mine. So buying it was obviously not a wise move. But the document clearly stated that the possibility of magic crystals being buried there was extremely high. So even though the handwriting on it was very crude, because it bore the royal seal, he still carried it out according to the document. Even the miners ordered to excavate thought this move was absurd. But once they actually began their work, they discovered a large quantity of extremely high-quality magic crystals. Before long, This news reached Mabel's ears through a guinea pig. "Thank you, little guinea pig." Now the royal family's reserve of magic crystals was already more than sufficient, and they no longer needed to be constrained by Javier. Mabel could hardly wait to see the ugly look on that old fox's face. Finally, the day of the regular meeting arrived. Mabel got up early to get ready, planning to eat a little more first and then go watch a good show. But unexpectedly on the way, she ran into Enrique, who had clearly been waiting for a long time. The boy's innocent smile made Mabel suddenly feel a little guilty. After all, he was the old fox's son. Afterward, the two ate desserts together in the garden. Mabel ate everything in one go. The considerate Enrique quickly pushed his own portion over to her as well. Only then did Mabel notice the redness and swelling on his face. But the boy lied and said that he had gotten that way from an insect bite. Mabel knew very well in her heart that these were injuries left by being beaten. After all, it had been the same in her previous life. Hopefully, she was only guessing wrong. Soon, the regular meeting officially began. This time, they were still discussing Count Sequira's embezzlement case. The difference was that Javier no longer opposed it and instead agreed to punish him severely. Mabel was immediately overjoyed. But strangely, the old fox not only did not seem anxious because of this. Instead, he even smiled at her. After the regular meeting ended, the emperor finally remembered the matter of the mine. Only then did the aide take out the already approved document. Looking at the crude handwriting and that brazen lie, the retired emperor frowned on the spot. Who exactly was secretly helping the royal family, who came to the office that day? Other than the maid responsible for cleaning, there was no one else. Oh, right, His Majesty the Emperor came once. The retired emperor laughed on the spot. So neither of them suspected Mabel at all. After all, what could a child just over 1 year old possibly understand? Then let us begin the investigation with the maid as the focus. Afterward, the emperor came to his daughter's bedroom. Looking at her sleeping face, he felt both happy and heartbroken. She was so young, yet she already had to work hard to attend council meetings. Before leaving, he gently placed a kiss on his daughter's forehead, hoping she would have a good dream, and that when she saw Daddy tomorrow, she would smile happily too. The 1-year-old little emperor was actually being asked for marriage by a bunch of little brats. The tyrant father was extremely angry, and Mabel also devised a way to take down the old fox, Duke Javier. But as soon as she turned around, the old fox sent over a letter. The aide opened it with a heart full of confusion. Inside, it plainly stated that he hoped His Majesty the Emperor would grant a marriage between Mabel and his son Enrique. Even the aide was so furious that he started cursing loudly. When the tyrant learned of this, he tore the letter to pieces on the spot and threw it straight into the fireplace. Although he wore a smile on his face, it made people shudder with fear. So everyone watched eagerly, and the matter quickly spread throughout the entire empire, with every noble house grinding their teeth in resentment. Because Mabel was also the most perfect daughter-in-law candidate in their hearts. Now that Javier had made the first move, naturally, they could not just sit by and do nothing. So starting the very next day, the young masters of various families appeared one after another before Mabel. Following the words their parents had taught them, they praised Mabel. They even presented flowers to win her favor. But Mabel said bluntly that she did not like flowers. She only liked glittering gold and jewels, because in her heart, as long as she had money, she would not have to worry about having no clothes to wear or no food to eat. Upon hearing this, one of the boys ran off shouting that His Majesty liked gold and hated flowers. These words quickly reached the retired emperor's ears, and when he learned that his precious daughter did not like flowers, he thought about how miserable she must have been every day while strolling in the garden. So the tyrant immediately ordered that all the flowers in the garden be burned. The next day, Oscar, who was about to return home, was holding his younger sister with a face full of reluctance. Although he only went back once every few months, it was still obvious how unwilling he was. But it was still obvious how unwilling he was until after Mabel coaxed and tricked him for a while. Only then did he awkwardly get into the carriage and leave the palace. After things were settled here, Mabel went by herself to look for the divine beast, but no matter how she searched, she could not find any trace of it. Suddenly, she bumped into a boy and fell to the ground at once. The boy was panicking so badly that for a moment, he had no idea what to do. The next second, the tyrant appeared there. He gently picked up his daughter and ordered that the person be thrown directly out of the palace. And that was still not the end of it. In the end, he even decided that from today onward, no boys of an age similar to Mabel's, regardless of family, would be allowed to enter the palace. Mabel froze on the spot. What about Oscar, who had just left the palace? Mabel shouted anxiously, wanting to say that Oscar was still outside the palace. But the retired emperor could only understand the 3 words, Oscar. Then he was called away by the aide again. Mabel was extremely troubled. Even her usual favorite cake could no longer interest her, as all she could think about was how to rescue Oscar. Perhaps going to pick him up herself would work, but without guards, she could not even get close to the palace gate. At that moment, Lissandro's figure appeared in her mind. In truth, she did not want to ask this person for help at all, but for Oscar's sake, she still called out to him. On the surface, the man calmly asked Mabel what was the matter, but in his heart, he was already overjoyed. Oscar returned to the ducal residence. Led by the head maid, he arrived at the dining hall. There he met his birth mother, whom he had not seen for a long time. But as soon as Duke Donovan saw his son, the first thing he asked was how his recent training had been going. When he heard that Oscar had been practicing diligently all along, he instantly raised his voice. Diligence alone is not enough. After giving up the throne, didn't you decide to become His Majesty's knight? So you must make yourself even more perfect and even more unbreakable. Remember my words. Oscar did not dare say much at all and could only softly agree. Originally, he had hoped that after he was no longer the heir to the throne, his mother's attitude might change. But unexpectedly, even now, she still had the attitude of a strict teacher. He did not stay long and directly got into a carriage to return to the palace. It was just that after not seeing Mabel for only one morning, he had already started missing her. But when he arrived at the palace gate, he was stopped outside by the guards. "Sorry, Your Highness the Crown Prince. We are carrying out the retired Emperor's orders," Oscar asked in confusion. "Father ordered that entry to and exit from the Imperial City be forbidden? That makes no sense. The retired Emperor has ordered that anyone close to His Majesty's age, regardless of family, is not allowed to enter." Only then did Oscar suddenly understand, and he very much approved of his father's doing this. But he himself had been implicated as well. "I will obey the order. Send someone in to inform the retired Emperor." Just then, Mabel's voice came from not far away. His little sister had actually come out specially to pick him up. Mabel was seen running over in quick steps. She grabbed Oscar's hand and ran back with him. Oscar was deeply moved, but the tactless guards still stopped the two of them. They said they had to report it to the retired Emperor first. Mabel was angry, and the next second she was about to explode. She said bluntly that she was the Emperor, so why should she have to wait? "You should obey my orders, not the retired Emperor's." Unfortunately, the guards could not understand her at all. This made Mabel so anxious that she shouted at them to move aside, but the few of them still did not react at all. Lysandro was almost amused to death by how cute she was. He quietly stepped forward and softly reminded them, saying that he would explain things to the retired Emperor. At last, the three of them returned to the palace smoothly. Everyone returned to the palace smoothly, and Oscar sincerely expressed his thanks. As for Mabel, she was so shy that she did not look back and simply walked ahead with her head lowered. Oscar smiled. His little sister was just too adorable. No wonder he had missed her so much all the way here. "By the way, what is going on between you and Uncle? Usually, whenever Uncle gets close to you, don't you start crying? Why did you come together today?" Mabel recalled what had just happened and stamped her feet in anger. Meanwhile, Lysandro laughed heartily from being so amused. It turned out that just a few hours earlier, Mabel had asked him to bring Oscar into the palace, but he had deliberately pretended to look troubled, saying that he was merely a little guard with no real power. Then he asked Mabel to agree to one request of his. That was to give him the cake on the table, and then he would work hard to get it done. There really was someone this shameless, even trying to snatch a child's food. Just as you said, if Oscar cannot come in, then he will have to return to the ducal residence again. Besides, Oscar is especially afraid of my older sister. It was just too pitiful, and Mabel only thought about it for 0.01 seconds. In the end, she still decided to painfully part with it. She speared the cake and quickly fed it into Lysandro's mouth. Even after gaining an advantage, the man still acted smug, saying that he had only wanted the cake at first, but had not expected His Majesty to personally feed it to his lips. How gentle and considerate. Back to the present, Lysandro was laughing so hard he could not stop. In the blink of an eye, he was suspended by the retired Emperor. And replaced with two burly men. A second ago, Mabel was still gloating over his misfortune, but the next second, she actually started missing him again, because these two men were following far too closely. She ran into the old fox, Duke Javier, who had come to block her way. The guard sensed a threat and immediately stood in the middle. Seeing this, the old fox said in a sneering tone that they really were good dogs raised by the retired Emperor. In order to vent her anger, Mabel deliberately pretended not to understand and asked where the doggies were. The old fox went along with her words and said that they had just been over there, but now they had probably run off. And after hearing that, Mabel asked in a childish voice, "How could doggies possibly run over here? Duke Javier, are you an idiot?" But the Duke merely froze for a moment. Then he forcibly held back from laughing, because today he had not come to chat idly with a child. "What I want to tell you is about my son." Mabel was very puzzled. What exactly was he getting at? "Enrique likes you very much, Your Majesty." "Do you like Enrique?" "I do." "Then would you like to stay with him every day and play together?" "Living together every day, tasting delicious food together, reading and writing together." Javier was still chattering on and on when an arrow suddenly shot over. It almost hit Mabel. Fortunately, the maid reacted quickly and swiftly pulled her into her arms, and only then did they barely dodge it. "Someone is attacking. Quick, protect His Majesty the Emperor. Quick, protect His Majesty the Emperor." The two personal guards instantly stood in front, blocking the fierce attack. Javier seemed genuinely anxious as he showed concern for Mabel. He shouted that the guards would arrive here immediately, so there was no need to worry. The next second, another arrow flew over. Javier stepped forward and blocked it with his own body. Only then did Mabel realize that the target was actually herself. If Javier had not been there just now, she would have died again. She was trembling with fear all over. She had died so tragically in her previous life and had only with great difficulty been reborn here. She did not want to repeat the same tragedy again. So Mabel used all of her spiritual power. She summoned the hornets around them to launch an attack, and in an instant the assassins were surrounded by a dense black swarm. It's hornets. In an instant the assassins were surrounded by a dense black swarm that flew straight at the masked men. The scene immediately descended into chaos, but even so, it could only hold them back temporarily. Fortunately, the retired emperor, a master swordsman, rushed over upon hearing the commotion. All the assassins fled in panic. Go after them. Don't let a single one escape. After arranging everything, he hurriedly ran to his daughter's side and carefully checked whether she was injured. And he held her tightly in his arms, comforting her softly. That anxious expression of his was seen clearly by Mabel. But before she could make any reaction, she fainted because her body had been overdrawn. Time came to 3 days later. Mabel had already remained unconscious for 3 days, but the examination results showed no abnormalities. It was just unclear why she still had not awakened. And through investigation, it was found that in this incident, the palace barrier mage had been bribed, which allowed the assassins to sneak into the palace. And it just so happened to be when the strongest one, Lysandro, had been dismissed. Both father and son believed this had been sent by Dublin. Grinding their teeth, they wanted to seize the culprit, and the atmosphere instantly dropped to freezing point. The imperial physician was nearly scared to death. Speaking of which, when will Mabel wake up? Shouldn't that question be asked of the doctor? The looks in their eyes were almost enough to kill someone. The imperial physician was so frightened that he knelt and begged for mercy, speaking endlessly of his difficulties. Mabel finally woke up. The three of them all turned their heads to look at once. The father and son immediately gathered around her and asked whether she felt uncomfortable anywhere. The imperial physician also happily let out a sigh of relief. She had only been unconscious for a little while. Why were they making such expressions? She did not know that during the 3 days she had been unconscious. For the father and son, every day had felt like a year. In the following days, no matter where she went, someone followed her. Even the number of guards had increased by a lot. Today, she had finally managed to persuade the two of them to let her come out to see the divine beast. Earlier, you had the hornets chase after those attackers, and I followed them to take a look too. Mabel desperately wanted to know who that person was, but she had not expected that she also knew the mastermind behind it. It was none other than the old fox, Duke Javier. Mabel froze on the spot, because when she had been attacked at that time, Javier had even taken an arrow for her. So it turned out that all of this had merely been a performance put on to deceive her. Mabel decided to think of a way to get revenge. So, being able to survive this disaster was thanks to her superpower, and also thanks to the retired emperor who came to save her. She did not know when the next danger would arrive. So before that happened, she had to train well in order to protect herself, and she also had to become even stronger until she could use this ability more freely. Winter soon arrived. Mabel often stayed together with the animals, so her ability had improved as well. She gently stretched out her hand and released spiritual power, and soon a great deal of grass grew from the ground. The little animals all ate very happily, but this was still far from enough. If she wanted to become stronger, she still needed time to accumulate it little by little. Mabel felt extremely anxious, because only by becoming stronger as quickly as possible could she punish Javier. Suddenly, a commotion came from the distance. The soldiers shouted that someone was attacking. Mabel's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Could it be aimed at her again? At this moment, Lysandro hurried over in great panic. He said that Dublin's demon was attacking the imperial city and that she had to quickly go to a safe place. Mabel was sent to the palace. After learning that it was the retired emperor himself who had gone to meet the enemy, she could not help but recall the boy's tragic state from last time. Surely this time, he would not just die outright, right? The retired emperor who had come to fight was already stunned, because Dublin's demon had not only failed to injure a single one of them, it had even wiped out all the Dublin forces it had brought. Could this be Belen's trick? Why are you doing this? Because they interfered with the purpose I came here to fulfill. The old emperor became more and more confused as he listened, but the boy said, "Bring your daughter, that is the emperor, before me." The icy tone and unreasonable demand instantly made the man's fury surge. Everyone present was shocked by this development. It was obvious that a fierce battle was about to begin. As a sword master, the retired emperor was the first to launch an attack. Ordinary sword energy attacks were completely ineffective. Just as he decided to use his unique ultimate technique, Mabel suddenly appeared and shouted loudly to stop them. "Stop, you two, don't fight anymore." The retired emperor panicked. How could his precious daughter be here? The boy also stopped at the same time and stared at Mabel for a long while. This further confirmed his suspicion. The closer he got to the imperial city of Amano, the clearer his mind became. And now he was in a completely lucid state, just as he suspected. It really had something to do with this little emperor. Mabel felt a little scared under his gaze, but she felt that the boy remembered her. So she gathered her courage to greet him and introduced herself. But unexpectedly, the boy not only remained expressionless, he even walked straight toward her. The retired emperor completely panicked and shouted for Mabel to hide behind him. Even Lysandro hurried forward to warn him. The two grown men stood in between just like that. Mabel was so nervous that she silently prayed in her heart, "Please don't come any closer. or you'll end up badly hurt again like last time. But what no one expected was, he actually knelt directly in front of Mabel. I want to seek refuge in a Manhwa. I want to become your subordinate. Please take me in. The retired emperor was so furious that sword energy surged around him. He looked ready to tear the boy apart on the spot, but Mabel suddenly stepped forward and accepted the boy's request before anyone else could react. Originally, the retired emperor wanted his daughter to take back that decision, but one look at her expression told him that was completely impossible. So he could only helplessly order that the boy be thrown into the dungeon first. Not long after, Mabel asked Lysandro to take her to the dungeon. The girl nervously greeted him, and the boy unexpectedly took the initiative to say his name. You can call me Aiden. This development was something Mabel had never expected at all. Excitedly gripping the bars, she asked, "Why did you come here?" The boy's expression was cold, as if he were telling someone else's story. "Because I don't want to stay in Dublin, and I don't want to live like a dog." According to him, he had been mentally controlled by the Emperor of Dublin, which was why he slaughtered lives on the battlefield. That was why he slaughtered lives on the battlefield. In order not to wake up again in a place full of corpses, I came here. Although Mabel felt very sad hearing this, she still did not understand what direct connection that had to do with him coming here. Aiden did not tell her the most crucial reason. He only said that the Emperor of Dublin deeply hated the retired emperor. So if that carefully trained dog ran to the enemy's camp, he would definitely be furious, and the troops Dublin had brought had already been wiped out just now. If Mabel refused to take him in, he truly would have nowhere to go. Mabel immediately empathized with him, so he also had no family and no place to return to. All this time, he had been struggling on all alone, so she agreed on the spot to let the boy stay, but on the condition that he had to obey both her and the retired emperor. The boy obediently nodded. Only then did Mabel let out a sigh of relief. Then she turned to Lysandro and asked him to remove Aiden's shackles, because it looked painful to keep him bound like that. But obviously, that was not allowed because the boy was simply too dangerous. Mabel sincerely apologized to Aiden and promised that she would help remove them soon. However, in the very next second, the boy merely exerted a little force, and the shackles instantly shattered into countless pieces. Now, doesn't that look much better to you? Mabel was dumbfounded. So he had really only been bound for appearance's sake. As long as he wanted, he could free himself at any time. Just before the two of them were about to leave, Mabel took out a basket and handed it to him. After returning, Mabel kept thinking about the boy and wanted to know how he was doing in the dungeon. But obviously, it was impossible to get any information from the retired emperor or Lysandro. So she quietly pushed open the window. She took out a lot of cheese as payment and asked the mice for help. "I'd like to ask you to help me check on a boy. He's being held on the lowest level of the dungeon. See who he has met, what he has said, or whether he has received any punishment or anything like that." Just as she sent the mice away and was muttering to herself in worry about the boy, the retired emperor was already standing behind her. A guilty Mabel was startled out of her wits. "I heard you went to the dungeon. Why is it that ever since last time, you've always been doing such dangerous things? If that guy loses control, he could very likely hurt you." Unlike his usual joking manner, the retired emperor was unusually serious today. But when Mabel thought of her promise with the boy, she still firmly refused. "I've already made a promise with Aiden, so I will be responsible for him." The retired emperor was instantly deeply shaken. His heart even ached uncontrollably. All this time, Mabel had never cared much about anyone, and now she actually cared so much about that brat. It seemed very necessary to go to the dungeon and meet that Aiden, so he decided to go to the dungeon and meet the boy. At this moment, Aiden in the dungeon was staring blankly at the basket. This note was something Mabel had deliberately left behind just now. He had heard that inside was very delicious chocolate cake, but the boy never ate sweets, so the cake sat there untouched. Soon, the retired emperor arrived there and stormed into the cell after angrily opening the door.
"Speak.
What exactly is your true purpose in coming here?" The boy said nothing and merely observed the situation quietly. "The only reason you can stay here is because of my silent consent, so you'd better answer my question quickly." Only then did the boy understand that the person who truly held power was the man in front of him, so he could only answer honestly. "Actually, I have always been under Belen's mental control. That made me hurt others without any awareness. But on the day I was being escorted to a Manhwa, I met your daughter. At that very moment, the restraint Belen had placed on me loosened. It was the first time in my life that I woke up from that control." The retired emperor could not help but begin to doubt the truth of those words. Could it be that the reason he had suddenly become dazed on the battlefield not long ago was because of Mabel? "But you are so far from Mabel now. Doesn't that mean this has nothing to do with distance?" "This distance is fine, but of course, the closer I am to her, the better. The distance between you and her goes no further than this. I am not like Mabel. I will not trust you completely. As for how you will be dealt with, I will tell you after I have decided." Having said that, the retired emperor was just about to leave when he caught sight of the cake in the basket on the ground nearby. This was his precious daughter's favorite dessert, the chocolate cake. She was only allowed to eat one small piece of per day, and she had actually given it to this guy. He was so angry, he nearly swallowed the dazed boy whole on the spot. Meanwhile, Mabel was lying in the snow, feeling deeply troubled. In another 2 months, it would have been 1 full year since she became emperor. During this time, She had been deliberately acting shameless and deliberately making herself disliked. But the retired emperor still doted on her exactly as always. She would lie down without caring about her image during meetings, and the ministers even thought it was a sign of trust. What exactly could she do to successfully abdicate? It troubled her greatly. So far, the only thing she had managed to do was rescue Aiden from the dungeon. Although his residence was far from her own palace, it was already the best result possible. Soon, another 2 months passed. Under the nursemaid's careful dressing, Mabel became even cuter. Now she was full of confidence, because this year not only could she already walk by herself, she could also express her true wishes, so this time she would definitely be able to abdicate successfully. Forward, toward the road to abdication. But everyone's reaction at the scene made jaws drop. Today was Mabel's second birthday banquet. Dressed gorgeously and exquisitely, she walked toward the throne under everyone's gaze. Raise your heads. With Mabel's command, the ceremony officially began. Next, please present the gifts prepared for Her Majesty. The first item was a magic crystal made from the core of a rare beast from the south. Next was the fur of the ferocious wolf king from the north. Every single item was extremely precious, but Mabel maintained a cold and disdainful attitude the entire time. The ministers were instantly filled with fear and trepidation because Her Majesty's reaction clearly meant she was dissatisfied. The aide also noticed that something was wrong, so he hurriedly looked for a more eye-catching gift. When he discovered Marquis Gardenia's gift, his eyes lit up instantly. The Gardenia family presents to Your Majesty the ownership of all the buildings on the central street of the capital, which completely stunned Mabel. How is this a gift for a child? But she still forced herself to remain composed, because this time she had to act arrogant, rude, and hateful. She angrily declared that this was far from enough, and demanded that more gifts be presented. Her grandfather stepped forward and asked if she thought these gifts were too insignificant. Mabel verbally expressed agreement, but her heart was full of guilt. Yet for the sake of her abdication plan, she could only wrong her grandfather for now. Marquis Gardenia's face flushed red instantly. Obviously, he was unhappy, but he shouted loudly, "I knew this would happen. It's only one mere building, let alone for Your Majesty. Even I think it's embarrassing. I had originally intended to give Your Majesty the entire commercial district, but the aide heard it wrong. I should have transferred all of them into Your Majesty's name from the start." Mabel was completely stunned. Her grandfather had actually knelt down to her as well. This was far too improper. "It's all because I didn't prepare thoroughly enough and ruined Your Majesty's birthday. Then I'll give Your Majesty the Gardenia Chamber of Commerce as well, though it may still be insignificant." As soon as everyone heard this, they were instantly unnerved and all apologized to Mabel, and they presented their most precious possessions. Mabel hurriedly cast a pleading look toward the retired emperor, but the retired emperor completely misunderstood. With a proud expression, he declared that his gift was definitely the best of all. But when Mabel opened it, she discovered that it was actually the deed transferring ownership of the kingdom of Ophi. Mabel immediately clenched her fists in anger. She had not expected that even after going this far, she still had failed to provoke dissatisfaction and disappointment. At that moment, Oscar came into the room, smiling. He wished her a happy birthday and personally put a gemstone bracelet on her wrist. It was obviously from the same series as last year's necklace, and amazingly, it could automatically adjust its size according to the thickness of the wrist. He also brought Enrique's gift and a letter. Every line was filled with sincerity, and the gift was also Mabel's favorite, the chocolate from that shop that was so hard to get. At last, Mabel smiled in satisfaction, because only those two things were the only gifts today that truly counted as birthday presents. In order to successfully abdicate, the little emperor deliberately put on an extremely rude attitude, but the daughter-doting maniac only concluded that his daughter simply did not like this year's birthday gifts. Even so, he still believed that his own gift had been the grandest, and began planning which country he should give her next time. He caught sight of something glowing off to the side. When he walked over for a closer look, it seemed to be a small stone. The aide said this was a sacred relic sent by the Holy Nation. The retired emperor's expression changed instantly. He directly ordered someone to clear that thing away. He absolutely could not let his precious daughter see something like that. The aide, who was sorting the gifts, was very troubled over what excuse he should use to send the item back. But he did not notice that just before he closed the door, that stone had actually disappeared on its own. Just after midnight that night, Mabel got up, using both hands and feet to crawl. And just like that, Mabel made her way all the way to the balcony, on all fours. It turned out that she had received a note from the mice. It was sent by Aiden. Written clearly on it were the words, "Come to the balcony at dawn after midnight tonight." But when she looked around in every direction, she did not see a single person. Suddenly, a faint glimmer that was hard to notice came from not far away. When she walked closer, she saw that it was actually a whole bag of gold coins. Mabel beamed on the spot. Aiden really understood her heart too well. After all, cash was the true king. Early the next morning, Mabel stretched lazily, and as soon as she turned her head, she bumped into a stone. She clearly had not seen this thing yesterday, yet now it had suddenly appeared here. She thought to herself, could this be something from Aiden's bag? So, out of curiosity, she reached out to touch it, but the stone went straight into her body. The burning pain made Mabel shed tears involuntarily. The intense pain made Mabel cry unconsciously, and it took her a long time to recover. She went to find the divine beast with her doubts, and only then did she learn that this was a holy relic. It was something that could enhance sacred power. Mabel was overjoyed until she heard that this thing existed only in the Holy Kingdom. She instantly became nervous. What exactly were those people plotting? In the days that followed, Mabel still lazed around. She slept lying down at every meeting, only wanting to abdicate as soon as possible. It was said that the drought in the west had become very severe recently, and not a single drop of rain had fallen for several months. Although supplies were already being prepared, a prolonged drought could easily cause public panic, so they had to find a way to stabilize the people's hearts. The old fox deliberately proposed holding a rain-praying ceremony to soothe the people in the northwest who were being tormented by famine, because this kind of ceremony required the emperor to be present in person and to personally distribute relief supplies and comfort the people. So this matter was naturally opposed by the retired emperor. After all, Mabel was still too young, and it was still too early for her to appear in public. However, Mabel suddenly became interested and decided to play along and see what he was really up to. I can hold the rain-praying ceremony. The retired emperor quickly tried to persuade her otherwise, because outside the imperial city it was simply too dangerous, and the journey to the west was also extremely long. Although soothing the people's hearts was very important, his daughter's safety was even more important. "Father, won't you be going with me too?" The retired emperor's heart was instantly struck. So his daughter thought it was fine because he would accompany her. His daughter must believe that he was the most capable. That alone was enough. "Then there is no problem, but I have one condition. Since Duke Javier cares so much for the people, then you will surely do everything in your power for the people, so you will be the one to prepare the food." The old fox had no choice but to force a smile, and Marquis Gardenia's words were even more cutting, congratulating him on taking on such a fine task, and reminding him that the West was suffering from a severe water shortage. So while preparing food, he should not forget to prepare drinking water as well. But the Javier family was the richest merchant group in the empire, so this amount of money should not be any difficulty for them, right? It had to be said, the sight of Javier being frustrated was truly satisfying. Soon, the day of departure arrived. This was Mabel's first time leaving the imperial city, so she was both nervous and excited. She looked around in every direction, searching for Aiden's figure, but before she could find him, Oscar hurriedly ran over. He respectfully asked whether she was very afraid, since she was leaving home and going to such a distant place. No matter how Mabel explained it, Oscar still felt that his little sister was only pretending to be strong. "But you don't need to worry. No matter what happens, I will protect you. So just look forward to seeing what I can do." Mabel felt deeply moved inside. Today, Oscar especially looked like an older brother. Suddenly, Enrique also appeared. Mabel happily ran toward him and asked with concern about how he had been lately. "You haven't been bitten by bugs again recently, have you?" Enrique smiled brightly and thanked Mabel for her concern. That only made Mabel feel even stranger. What exactly was the old fox trying to do, bringing even Enrique along? Just as she was thinking about it, she was suddenly picked up by the retired emperor. "We are about to set off, are you ready?" He gently placed his daughter into the carriage and reminded her to sit still obediently. Mabel hesitated for a moment, but still called out to stop the retired emperor and asked whether he wanted to sit together with her. This time, the retired emperor rejected her unprecedentedly. He only gently placed a kiss on his daughter's forehead. "This time Daddy wants to protect you from the front. If possible, when we come back, we can ride in the same carriage again." Everyone seemed extremely tense, which Mabel found a little hard to understand. But this feeling of being protected still made her unable to stop herself from being moved. The next day, the group arrived in the west. Mabel was changed into ceremonial clothing and walked toward the altar to the sound of drums. The situation here was even more severe than imagined. The grassland had already withered completely. Not a drop of water could be seen anywhere. The people were extremely excited because His Majesty the Emperor had come in person. After all, once the ceremony was over, they would receive water and food supplies. Mabel had originally thought that it was the old fox, Duke Javier, causing trouble. She had not expected the situation to be so grave that even in her previous life, she had never seen anything like it. She sincerely wanted to do something for these people, even if it was only to bring down a tiny bit of rain. She spread her arms, pressed her palms together, and prayed earnestly, and cried out in her heart, "Rain, please fall quickly." Just a moment ago, the sky had been clear and bright. In the blink of an eye, dark clouds filled the sky. It actually began to pour with rain. All the people were overjoyed. This rain, delayed by several months, was simply a gift from the gods. Mabel was also very happy. She had not expected that it would actually succeed. And the attentive retired emperor quickly draped his own clothes over his daughter, afraid that if she got soaked in the rain, she would catch a cold, completely ignoring the fact that he himself was already drenched through. Suddenly, the crowd began to boil over. "It was your majesty who created the miracle. It was because the gods heard your majesty's prayer that they sent down the heavy rain." Mabel quickly shook her head like a rattledrum. If all of this were credited to her, then abdicating would become even more impossible. So she shamelessly shouted, Father is amazing. It really rained. It was Father who made the rain fall, right? Because Father is a swordsmanship elite. Public opinion was instantly led astray, and everyone began shouting, "Long live the retired emperor." And the rain praying ceremony came to a perfect end. Javier was trembling all over with rage, grinding his teeth, because his proposal of the rain praying ceremony had only ever been a pretense. A long time ago, the empire had once fallen into difficulty because of a rare drought. It was precisely because it received financial aid from the Javier family that it barely made it through the crisis. It was also from that time that the nouveau riche Javier family gained title and prestige. He had wanted to do it once more, both to elevate his family status and to make the imperial family lose face, but he had never expected the result to be completely the opposite. This was simply too bizarre. Even if a large number of high-purity magic crystals were consumed, grinding his teeth, it would still be impossible to make this rain last this long. This was absolutely not something humans could do. Enrique walked in. Javier asked with a dark face, "How has the matter I assigned to you been handled?" "Father, I really don't want to do this." "Enough, you useless thing. You can't even bring yourself to act against such a small child. I don't want to see you get out of here." The heartbroken Enrique just stood there blankly in the rain. Meanwhile, Mabel had already collapsed onto the bed from exhaustion, because this rain had used up all of her sacred power. Suddenly, the retired emperor told her with a face full of smiles, "We can go home now." Home? That's right, our home. Mabel blushed instantly. In her previous life, she had envied her friends so much for all having homes of their own, but the word home had never belonged to her, and now everything was different. "My precious daughter must be exhausted. After we return to the imperial city, we will eat every precious medicinal herb on the continent." Mabel slowly sat up and muttered softly, "I don't like those things at all." But the smile she could not hide on her face had already betrayed her. After a brief rest, the group officially set out on the road back to the palace. By now, Mabel had already been deeply moved by the retired emperor. Without realizing it, she had come to like this feeling of being unconditionally cherished. And when Oscar saw his sister spacing out, he thought she was unhappy. He immediately felt a little sad. Could it be because I got into the carriage in Father's place? But I was worried about you too, and I really wanted to see you. Seeing this, Mabel quickly explained loudly, "It's not like that. I'm very happy to go back with you." Only then did Oscar finally cheer up. But at that moment, Mabel asked about Aiden. "Do you know where he is? I have to take responsibility for him." Oscar froze completely. His adorable little sister actually cared about another boy and had even said she had to take responsibility for him. He immediately changed the subject, not letting his little sister keep thinking about another boy. "On this return trip, we can stop and look around along the way. Isn't that something worth looking forward to?" After that, Mabel experienced many different things, and also felt things completely different from those in the imperial palace. Time passed quickly, and the group was already preparing to set off back to the residence. The attentive retired emperor instructed Oscar to take good care of his sister, and told Cicero to go inspect the rear once. But when Aiden saw that man, he was extremely shocked. Why would Viscount Darageo be here? The man ran to the front of the group. He knocked on the carriage window. At once, he startled Mabel awake from her deep sleep. "I wanted to report something to you. The road ahead may be a little rough. Therefore, the carriage may be somewhat bumpy." Oscar became unhappy over such a small matter. He had actually woken his sister. "Ignore that guy and just lean on me to sleep." Mabel, whose energy had been overly depleted, fell asleep again, hoping that when she woke up, she would already be back at the imperial palace. But not long after, many magical pillars suddenly fell from the sky. The horses were startled and reared high. The scene instantly fell into complete chaos. Then, a sharp sword suddenly thrust into the carriage from behind. Fortunately, Mabel reacted quickly enough and nimbly dodged it. Seeing this, Oscar immediately moved to draw his sword and go out to fight, but Mabel grabbed him at once. After some persuasion, the few of them finally went out of the carriage together. However, the situation outside was extremely grave. Judging from the circumstances, the other side had at least 3 master-level mages, and our people had no way of resisting them. A large number of flaming arrows suddenly shot down from the sky, making Mabel glare at them angrily. In the next instant, all the arrows vanished without a trace. Everyone thought that it was Imano's mages who had blocked the attack, but Mabel, the true protector, tightly held her brother's hand and made up her mind in her heart. "This time, I will protect you." She quietly used her spiritual power to block the flaming arrows in the air. Just then, Cicero hurried over, claiming that he knew where the retired emperor was and that he would cover for them to go and rendezvous with him. As soon as he finished speaking, he headed toward the depths of the forest. Suddenly, the enemy's attack came again. It was as if they had long known the route the group would take. Oscar quickly stood in front of his sister and blocked all the arrows, while Mabel secretly dealt with the stragglers in the rear. She could not help thinking of the retired emperor. Normally, in a situation like this, he should have been the first to arrive. But today, there was still no sign of him for a long time. Could it be that something really had happened? Suddenly, a mage in a black robe appeared and launched an attack toward Mabel. The first thing the girl thought of was not herself, but her brother Oscar behind her. In order to keep her brother from getting hurt, she directly pushed him away. Just as Mabel was preparing to accept everything, she discovered that Cicero had blocked this fatal blow for her. The man anxiously asked whether she was hurt, That concerned look did not seem fake. Mabel felt extremely guilty. Cicero had actually suffered such a serious injury in order to protect her. But the next second, she caught sight of the sword in the man's hand. It was precisely the same one that had tried to assassinate her in the carriage just now. She could not help murmuring in a low voice, "This sword." The man's expression changed instantly. "You discovered it so quickly, then I can only carry out the plan ahead of schedule." As he spoke, he grabbed Mabel and lifted her up, and warned Oscar not to act rashly. Everyone was stunned. "What are you doing? Put down the sword at once." The man laughed smugly, saying that he had been undercover for a whole year, and yet no one had noticed at all. "What a bunch of fools. Let Mabel go right now, or my father will never let you off." The man instantly laughed even more brazenly. "What way do you think the retired emperor still has to save you now? He has already been hit by the paralysis magic created by our lord himself, so I imagine it doesn't feel very good. He must already be unable to move and is currently being dealt with by my subordinates. Then let us go over to the retired emperor now and have a look at how he cannot even move. And while we're at it, killing the little emperor he treasures most right in front of him will surely be even more interesting." Mabel could hardly believe what she had just heard. She had always believed that her father, the emperor, would never come to harm. Right now, the most urgent thing was to get herself out of danger first, and then protect everyone else. That included her father as well. So she released her magic, summoned all the flying insects in the mountains, and controlled several vines to burst out of the ground. All the attacks struck toward the man at the same time. Mabel also took advantage of this opening to hurry and escape. But at the most critical moment, she was still grabbed. The man furiously raised the sharp sword in his hand and slashed straight down at Mabel. At the very last moment, the retired emperor, who had been missing for a long time, suddenly appeared. He took the fatal blow in her place. Even though the man himself was already seriously wounded, he still smiled and asked his daughter whether she was hurt. "Daddy is here. Daddy said he would protect you and would never let you fall into danger." Nearby, Cicero laughed wildly and arrogantly, and directly yanked the sword out with force. Even after being hit by magic strong enough to bring down a monster, he still managed to run all the way here. What a madman. Seeing that the mission had already been completed, the man turned and ran. Oscar, the only one at the scene who was still conscious, hurriedly ordered a pursuit. That man must not be allowed to escape. At this moment, Mabel was completely panicked. She kept pressing on the retired emperor's wound, but blood still kept pouring out, refusing to stop no matter what she did. "Why would you do this? Why did you shield me from that arrow? Are you an idiot? What am I supposed to do now?" Mabel kept questioning him without pause, yet her tears had already burst forth uncontrollably, like a broken dam. The retired emperor gently wiped away her tears. With a faint smile, he answered, "Why are there so many whys? Because you are my most beloved, precious daughter in this world." At that moment, Mabel's heart completely shattered. It wasn't that she could not feel this familial love. It was just that in her previous life, she had also once believed that she was truly loved. But later, when she was completely unguarded, she was abandoned and hurt. That was why she had thought the person before her would be the same. That was why she had always been unwilling to accept it and unwilling to face it. Seeing that the retired emperor was about to close his eyes forever, Mabel finally broke down completely. In her heart, she repeated over and over, "Don't go. I'll be good and do as I'm told." She was saying this to her mother from her previous life, and also to the retired emperor now. She had finally managed to cross that wall in her heart. She never expected that the ending waiting for her would be like this. If she had known it would come to this, she should not have treated herself so gently back then. She cried out hysterically, "Don't go. Don't leave me alone." In an instant, a golden pillar of light appeared deep within the forest and shot straight into the sky. Afterward, tiny specks of light slowly drifted down like rain. All the soldiers felt a warmth they had never experienced before, and the wound on the retired emperor's chest miraculously healed. He also regained consciousness at once. Seeing his daughter crying her eyes out, the old father's heart nearly shattered. He hurriedly asked whether she was hurt, yet the very next second, Mabel fainted on the spot. But when the young emperor was in danger, where had the male lead gone? It turned out that before the sudden attack happened, Aiden had already recognized Viscount Aragao. That man was a trusted confidant of Emperor Dublin. It was obvious that he had forged his identity and infiltrated Monarch. Originally, Aiden had no interest in the grudges between the two nations, but he would never allow Mabel's safety to be threatened. So Aiden immediately told the matter to Lysandro, who was beside him. But before the man could figure out what was going on, sounds of an ambush came from up ahead. Seeing that chaos had already broken out outside, Aiden immediately understood that Dublin had come well prepared this time. Lysandro shouted at the boy, "You are still under observation and cannot act alone." But in the very next second, the enemy's archmage launched an attack at him. In an instant, no one could move, and they were even knocked unconscious on the spot. The other side did not pause in the slightest and immediately turned to retreat. So Dublin's target was the young emperor, Mabel. What the boy feared most was that her life would be in danger. After all, Mabel was the only one who could remove the restriction placed on him by Emperor Dublin. He moved quickly, observing the situation around him. At the same time, he searched for Mabel's figure. Suddenly, not far away, came the voices of soldiers pursuing Cicero. The moment he saw Viscount Aragao, Aiden threw himself straight at the man. Then he pinned him heavily to the ground. "Long time no see, Viscount Daragao. The man was still spouting arrogant words. Without another word, Aiden directly twisted and broke his arm. Then he knocked him unconscious on the spot. "Come here. Take him away." When the soldiers saw Aiden, they did not even dare approach. The boy directly kicked the man over to them. "He is a spy sent by Dublin, Viscount Daragao. This person is extremely cunning. You must keep a strict watch on him." After saying that, he once again went forward to search for Mabel. Suddenly, a pillar of light shot up from the forest ahead. Tiny specks of light scattered across the entire land. Aiden felt a warmth he had never experienced before. What came into view was Mabel lying unconscious, and the retired emperor crying in heartbreak. He knew that in the end, he had still arrived too late. That night, the group finally returned safely to the palace. As her father, the retired emperor blamed himself to the extreme. He believed that all of this was entirely his fault. He should not have foolishly fallen victim to the magical attack. He should not have insisted on staying outside the carriage to protect his daughter. And he should never have agreed to hold the rain prayer ritual. Even Oscar felt incomparably guilty, thinking that he had failed to protect his sister. The emperor sincerely comforted his young son. "This is not your fault. I was the one who failed to protect all of you. Go and get some rest." At this moment, Lysandro came to report with Aiden. After learning that Cicero was actually a trusted confidant of Dublin, the man did not show much emotion. He simply told Aiden to go back first. He would reward him for his merits later. Seeing the retired emperor's current state, Lysandro was very worried, because ever since Mabel fell unconscious, he had not closed his eyes for an entire week. Although the imperial physicians had diagnosed that Mabel's body was not in serious condition, the retired emperor still sank deeply into endless self-blame. "My head hurts so much right now that I simply cannot sleep. I even crazily want to kill someone. Although I promised Senna that I would not casually take another person's life. This time, she will definitely understand me." After saying that, he carried his sword and headed toward the dungeon. He directly ended the life of the traitor Daragao. And so, day after day, time passed. Everyone was immersed in sorrow. Yet the reason for Mabel's coma and the way to cure it could never be found. What she had done that day to save everyone also gradually began to spread. Now, throughout the entire empire, there was no one who did not know of it. It also completely confirmed the prophecy of the seed of God. Soon, a month had passed. Mabel still showed not the slightest sign of waking up. Obviously, by now, there was no other way except to seek help from the holy nation. If this continues, not only will His Majesty collapse, but even you yourself will also fall ill. So please make a decision as soon as possible, if only for the sake of His Majesty the Emperor, whom you cherish most. At last, the retired emperor made up his mind. He told his aide to bring paper and pen. At this moment, Mabel was still trapped in a dream. When she was young, no matter how hard she tried, she could never obtain her parents' love. In the end, she was even abandoned and could only live all by herself. Every day, she could only grit her teeth and endure, yet she still could not withstand the crushing weight of life. Poverty, cold, and hunger kept sweeping over her until they completely drowned her. Whenever she was in so much pain that she was about to lose the strength to carry on, she would hope that there could be a place to shelter her from the wind and rain. In order to protect herself, she sealed off her heart. But even so, she still hoped that someone could break through it and bring her warmth. Suddenly, the figure of the retired emperor appeared, that one-of-a-kind embrace, that unwavering protection, and in the end, he was even willing to pay with his life. Each and every one of these things made it impossible not to be moved. Because she had never truly experienced what it felt like to be loved before, she had always suspected everything blindly. But now, Mabel was already certain that the retired emperor truly loved and cherished her. She murmured softly, "Although it's a little late, can I still call you Daddy?" In her daze, Mabel stretched out her hand and softly called the retired emperor Daddy. The retired emperor, who seemed to have aged several years, could hardly believe it. Trembling, he pulled his daughter tightly into his arms, afraid that all of this was just a dream. The reason this form of address held such great power was because in the past, Mabel had always called him Father Emperor and had never called him Daddy. Because of this, he had always suspected that perhaps he had not done enough. He had failed to make his daughter truly trust him, which was why she had remained so distant from him. Now he had finally heard that form of address, and everything felt like a dream, so he could only hold her tighter, and tighter still, to confirm that everything before his eyes was truly happening. Soon, news of Mabel's awakening spread throughout the entire palace. Everyone was overjoyed. Oscar was naturally no exception. He had far too many questions he wanted to ask. Even more, he wanted to confirm his sister's physical condition at the very first moment. But when he thought of his sister's previous injuries, he felt that he had no right to do so. He had clearly said that he would become a knight, but when the critical moment came, he had failed to protect anyone. At the same time, Mabel was also silently observing the changes in herself. Only at this moment did she truly accept her new life as Mabel. She swore that she would never again ignore the sincere love her family had for her. Just then, the Emperor Emeritus pushed the door open and entered. Smiling warmly, he scooped his daughter up in his arms. He told her that they had already found the sweet medicinal herbs. As long as she took them for a while, she would recover her health. Mabel knew that her father must have gone to great lengths for her, so she loudly said that she really liked it. The old father was instantly overjoyed and told his daughter to go ahead and ask for anything she wanted. The girl truly felt her father's loving heart that cherished her. She held his hand a little tighter and said, "Thank you for taking care of me, silly child. That's only what I should do." At that moment, Mabel thought of the brother she had not seen for a long time. Where did Oscar go? Did he go to the Duke's house? The Emperor Emeritus replied blandly that he was still in the palace, practicing swordsmanship every day. It seemed as though he was hiding many things in his heart. Mabel was very worried and decided to go see him herself. Before she even reached the training grounds, she could already hear the whistling sound of swords being swung. She turned her head and said that she wanted to go closer and take a look. Lysandro agreed with a smile all over his face, and just before Mabel was about to leave, he called out to stop her. "It is truly wonderful that you were able to wake up. Being able to stand behind you and protect you again makes me truly very happy." Mabel was already deeply moved, but Lysandro then teasingly said, "You must be careful not to fall. After all, our Majesty is still such a tiny little round one." Teased like that, Mabel huffily decided that she would definitely settle the score with him later. At last, the girl saw the brother she had been longing for day and night, so she happily ran toward him. But the moment Oscar saw his sister, he actually threw down the sharp sword in his hand and turned to run. Mabel anxiously shouted after him as she chased from behind, but because she was running too fast, she suddenly fell to the ground. She simply went along with it and lay on the ground. Sure enough, Oscar still came running back in distress to check her injuries. After confirming that his sister was not hurt, he hurriedly said a few words and wanted to turn and leave again. Mabel suddenly grabbed his hand and asked sorrowfully, "Why are you avoiding me? Do you hate me? Or are you tired of me?" Oscar lowered his head in dejection. "You are my only sister. How could I possibly hate you? I clearly said before that I would protect you. But in the end, I still let you suffer such serious injuries. What right do I have to face you like this?" Only then did Mabel realize that this was what her brother had been thinking all along. And besides feeling heartbroken, she was also a little angry. "Oscar, you're such a fool. How could you think that? Between family, what qualification is there to speak of? We should be protecting each other. You protect me, and I will protect you too." Oscar's heart was healed in an instant. His younger sister had finally truly accepted him as family. Just like that, the two of them held each other tightly. That night, Mabel was happier than ever, never expecting that she would have a younger brother even smaller than herself. But on such a warm and comfortable night, she had a nightmare. She dreamed that the father and mother from her previous life heartlessly abandoned her once again. This time, she did not care too much. But next, she dreamed that her imperial father and her brother also spoke harshly to her. That was something she absolutely could not accept. Mabel woke from the dream in fear, only to meet the anxious expressions on their faces. "Did you have a dream? Did you have a nightmare? Don't be afraid, I'm here." The two of them held her hands like that, bringing her warmth. Oscar suggested that he would sleep with his sister tonight. The Emperor Emeritus was unwilling to be outdone and said that having him there was enough. The two of them kept bickering back and forth endlessly. A scene like this made Mabel feel incomparably at ease. She swore that she would definitely protect her father and brother, who loved her dearly, even if she would become a tyrant because of it. Today was the day Elder Clement, the ruler of the Holy Nation, came to pay a visit. The moment he placed his hand on Mabel's wrist, the girl clearly felt much of the discomfort inside her body ease. But the man still said that although the out-of-control holy power had calmed down considerably, it could still go berserk at any time. So when using your healing ability, you must be especially careful. Her Majesty Mabel Imon. The moment that form of address came out, the Emperor Emeritus immediately became displeased and told him to remove Winter. But the man slyly said that since he was the one helping Mabel recover her health, then the surname of the Seed of God should be acknowledged. Only then did Mabel completely understand. It was indeed impossible that the Holy Nation would help her for no reason. But the source of all this was that the Holy Nation had sent the Holy Relic in the first place, activating her holy power. That was what caused things to develop to an uncontrollable point. So all of this felt more like a trap they had set up long ago. Seeing Mabel question him like this, the Emperor Emeritus immediately panicked, but Mabel quietly made a gesture for him to stay silent. The man excitedly explained that the Seed of God held a status second only to God and was the most special existence. Mabel smiled faintly, already having an idea in mind. It turned out that she had previously learned from a book that there was something only the Divine King could possess. It was a symbol of the highest authority in the Holy Nation. So she said with a sly smile, "You know Yellum, right? Then in that case, that should belong to me, shouldn't it? So give Yellum to me." In an instant, everyone at the scene was petrified. Elder Clement was completely stunned, and no matter how he tried to persuade her, he failed. It was obvious that if he did not hand over the holy relic, then he could forget about adding a surname. Elder Clement hurriedly explained that it was something belonging to the king of the Holy Nation, and there was no way he could make that decision himself. After saying that, he hurriedly left. The Emperor Emeritus proudly picked up his daughter, not expecting that she would solve this difficult problem in just a few moves. Mabel also made up her mind that she would definitely eliminate all such unfavorable factors. But first, she needed a helper, so she voiced her request. The Emperor Emeritus agreed, without even thinking. But unexpectedly, Mabel said that she wanted Aiden to be her guard knight. The Emperor Emeritus, as her father, was instantly dumbfounded. He refused on the spot, saying that the demon from Dublin was too dangerous. But Mabel immediately brought up how Aiden had captured the traitor Cicero. "Didn't you say that you would give me whatever I wanted, Dad? Are you going to go back on your word now?" Faced with such a pitiful and endearing look, the Emperor Emeritus simply could not refuse. In the end, he could only force a smile and agree. The only condition was that he could not leave Lysandro's sight. Just like that, the two of them began to become inseparable. In order to completely bring down Dublin, the mastermind behind this incident, Mabel extended an invitation to Aiden. "You want revenge against Bellin too, don't you? Then join me." The boy immediately dropped to one knee and offered his loyalty. "Whatever orders you have, I will obey them all." As he watched the girl's departing figure, a thought unexpectedly arose in his heart. He wanted to witness her growth. That very night, Bellin, the Emperor of Dublin, received the news of Aiden's betrayal. Looking at the arm that had been cut off by Esteban, he laughed almost maniacally. He agreed to the boy's request on the spot. He had not expected that today. What would come first was news of betrayal. He swore in his heart that he would make those two people pay the price. Very soon, 3 years passed. Mabel had also grown a lot, and was no longer that little baby who could not even speak clearly. Now, her holy power had greatly increased, and it was already enough to break the barrier around the imperial city and allow divine beasts to enter and live in the city. And Aiden had remained by her side all along, becoming her guard knight. But what gave people a headache was that recently Dublin had become especially cautious. There were also no clues at all from the spies hidden in Imanor. Other than continuing the investigation, there was no other way. Just like that, the two of them were taking a walk in the courtyard. Mabel looked around, admiring the flowers there. Suddenly, her foot slipped and she was just about to fall. Luckily, Aiden beside her caught her in time, so she was not hurt. The father and son appeared there with gloomy faces, and in perfect unison, they called for her to come over. The atmosphere at the scene instantly became extremely tense. Only then did Mabel realize that her old father was jealous, so she sweetly called out, "Dad," and she explained what had just happened. "If it weren't for Aiden, I definitely would have been hurt. So thank you for saving me. Dad, you also have to say thank you to Aiden." Her adorable appearance made it impossible for anyone to refuse, so he could only reluctantly say thank you. At the meeting that day, Mabel learned that the drought was rapidly spreading across the country. While worrying about wanting to do something for the people, she seriously stamped the documents. At that moment, she heard a minister beside her mutter quietly, "I only came to see your majesty. You are so adorable. Why can't I be that document?" Mabel was completely speechless. If she really were a child, she would definitely have been spoiled rotten by now. The old fox suddenly raised his hand and asked, "Your Majesty the Emperor Emeritus, the founding banquet is coming soon, isn't it?" And he suggested that Mabel attend as well. The Emperor Emeritus knew that Javier definitely had ill intentions, but even if his precious daughter did not attend this time, there would still always be some people who would set their sights on her, and there would always be some people who coveted her. Since it was impossible to shield her forever, without a crack, it would be better to simply let her attend. That way, everyone would know that Mabel was not someone they could lay a hand on. So the Emperor Emeritus asked for his daughter's opinion. "If you want to attend, Daddy will definitely do everything he can to help you." The girl smiled brightly and adorably, and agreed on the spot. After the meeting ended, the Emperor Emeritus began making preparations for Mabel's first appearance. Regarding Mabel's first appearance, several people all said they would prepare the most exquisite jewelry and dresses for her, and he had his aides investigate which dress shop had recently become the most popular among noble ladies. "Just leave it to me." The Emperor Emeritus was brimming with confidence, but it gave Mabel an ominous feeling. Sure enough, that feeling was quickly proven right. The Emperor Emeritus actually put Duke Donovan in charge of this matter. One had to know that she was the Emperor Emeritus's ex-wife. The relationship between the two of them was truly very awkward. Mabel was stunned by the pressure in the air. "Have you received an education in the palace? What about dance lessons?"
"No." "What are you studying now?"
"Nothing." Every single question received a negative answer, because the Emperor Emeritus had spoiled her too much and only let her play as she pleased. Mabel was so embarrassed that she wished she could crawl into a crack in the ground. But unexpectedly, the Duchess said, "If you have no plans tomorrow, let's go look around the clothing shops on Ricabelli Street." Mabel's eyes instantly lit up, because that was the most prosperous shopping street in the capital. "But Father Emperor probably won't agree, right? I will personally speak to the Emperor Emeritus. It will be better for you to experience and observe it for yourself." Mabel happily agreed. The two of them were about to go out alone together. At the training grounds the next day, Aiden and Oscar were sparring. Mabel's appearance instantly drew both of their attention. The passing knights all stared at the little emperor and exclaimed how cute she was. But Oscar glared them back with a single look. What on earth was going on? The others could only quickly scatter. Mabel invited the two of them to eat dessert together. Aiden clearly did not like it, but he still forced himself to eat it. That made Oscar find it very funny, so he deliberately teased him. "Aiden loves sweets the most. Here, eat more." Suddenly, Mabel cried out, "Oh no, Oscar. Tomorrow, I am going out of the palace with Duke Donovan." Oscar was greatly shocked when he heard this. He guiltily said that he could not go along, but actually, Mabel only wanted to learn about Duke Donovan. For example, what she liked and what she disliked. Oscar did not really know his mother's preferences, but the only thing he could say for sure was that she disliked ignorant people. Soon, the day of the outing arrived. After learning the truth, Mabel trembled nervously because she was exactly the kind of person the Duchess disliked. The Duchess did not speak at all along the way. It was only after they reached their destination that she finally made a sound. So Mabel secretly made up her mind that today she must act mature and steady. Soon the two of them entered the shop. After the attendants all bowed to Mabel, they brought her into the fitting room. It was said to be the most fashionable style in the capital recently. It was a scaled-down version of adult fashion, reproducing the style proportionally and showing the clothing's lines in finer detail. Mabel was squeezed so tightly that she could barely breathe. But when she heard the Duchess ask for her opinion, in order to seem composed, she still forced herself to say it was beautiful. Unexpectedly, the Duchess had already reserved another style in advance. What was different from before was that this kind of dress only required one person to help put it on. The moment she put it on, Mabel could not help but sigh. This dress is simply light and comfortable. That was exactly why the Duchess had custom-made it, because she believed that although Mabel held a lofty position, she was still just a child in the end, so there was no need for her to try adult styles so early. After saying that, she told the shopkeeper to wrap up all the clothes before them. Everyone was stunned, speechless, in shock. But what was even more unexpected came after that. The two of them went to countless shops, because they still had not seen anything truly striking. So the Duchess bought everything, and she did the same in every shop. After who knew how long of shopping, this lavish spree finally came to an end. After stepping out of a store, Mabel ran into Enrique. In just 3 short years, the boy had grown much taller. It almost made Mabel fail to recognize him. The boy politely greeted the Duchess, and his younger sister Emily appeared at that moment as well. The girl gracefully lifted her skirt and curtsied. Then she began speaking at length. "I often hear my brother mention you. He said that your Majesty is both cute and beautiful, and now that I've seen you today, it truly is just as he said." Enrique, having been exposed to his face, was extremely embarrassed and hurriedly tried to stop his sister's rude behavior. But unexpectedly, Mabel only smiled and thanked her and praised the girl for being adorable. At that moment, a servant came to inform them that it was time to return to the residence. The two sides hurriedly said goodbye. After the carriage gradually drove farther away, the Duchess asked Mabel whether she had any contact with the younger generation of the Javier family. After learning that they had only met a few times, she earnestly advised her, "It would be better for your Majesty to be a little more careful around the Javier family." On the way back, she kept trying to avoid making eye contact with the Duchess. But with just one glance, the Duchess noticed it. "Your Majesty, are you afraid of me?" Mabel gathered her courage and asked that question. "Do you not dislike me?" The Duchess calmly said that she had no reason to dislike her. But even so, Mabel still did not understand. After all, Oscar had failed to take the throne because of her, and she was also the daughter born after the Emperor Emeritus remarried. But those still could not become reasons for the Duchess to dislike her. She believed that Oscar had given up the throne of his own accord, and that the Emperor Emeritus remarrying and having a child had nothing to do with her. Even taking 10,000 steps back, even if you think I dislike you, there is still no need to fear me, because as a ruler, you should be fearless. Mabel knew that this was the Duchess's stern way of showing concern, so she smiled and expressed her thanks to her. And from then on, the relationship between the two of them eased. Meanwhile, Aiden was carrying out a mission. Now Mabel's holy power had increased greatly, so even though the two of them were this far apart, there would still be no loss of control incident. When he recalled this morning, when he had woken Mabel up, and that moment when the two of them had accidentally touched, a strange feeling rose in Aiden's heart. He thought it was because he had suddenly come into contact with too much holy power. But in truth, it was because his feelings toward the girl he spent every day with were quietly changing. He arrived at a completely inconspicuous place. The moment he pushed the door open, a dagger suddenly flew toward him. Without question, he caught it easily. That man was a member of Bell, the street intelligence organization, and Aiden was the organization's public leader. 3 years ago, this organization had quietly been established. Not long afterward, it had infiltrated every social class, and the amount of intelligence it held was beyond imagination. Today's Aiden had come, as usual, to consolidate information, and no one could possibly imagine that the true power holder of this organization was actually the 5-year-old little emperor, Mabel. Although she could communicate with all the animals in the world, once that was exposed, it would be very easy for people with ulterior motives to exploit it. And as emperor, her movements were also highly restricted, so she needed an intelligence center. That was how Bell came to be established. After verification, the subordinates of Baron Milk were often entering and leaving the area near the Dublin border. The exact reason was still under investigation, and the old fox Javier had also been behaving much more quietly lately, but it was said that he seemed to have set his sights on the gold mine. Mabel had long since thought of a countermeasure. She was just waiting for Javier to show his foxtail. After all, This was the price he should have paid long ago. The 5-year-old little emperor's first public appearance had finally arrived. The moment she appeared, she stunned the entire crowd. Today was the much-rumored founding banquet. The old fox's daughter had attracted everyone's attention. The ladies were all praising her graceful manners. The noble young ladies envied her gorgeous dress. They also all praised the fact that she had an older brother who doted on her immensely. She could even play together with the cold imperial prince. She was simply the most dazzling star of the banquet. Emily happily accepted all this praise. But before she even had time to react, the true star of the founding banquet appeared. With the announcement, "Her Majesty the Emperor has arrived." All eyes focused on Mabel. Everyone was amazed, saying that she was like an angel, so adorable that it was as if a fairy spirit had descended. There were simply too many people at the scene. This made Mabel extremely nervous. Then, with a reminder from the Emperor Emeritus, she adjusted herself a little and then gracefully expressed her thanks to everyone present. And she wished everyone a good time. The Emperor Emeritus was incomparably proud of his daughter's performance and decided to give her a reward, whatever she wanted. But unexpectedly, Mabel said that she did not want any gift at all. Such a novel request left everyone present utterly dumbfounded. At that moment, Duke Donovan suggested that she go down and greet everyone. It was obvious that everyone there was full of anticipation. Without even thinking, Mabel agreed, and the nobles were all delighted as well. A long time passed. Mabel was already a little tired, but she still worked hard to keep up her social smile. She did not want to disappoint the Duchess's kindness. Suddenly, the music changed. Everyone began to dance. The old fox's son, Enrique, suddenly stepped forward and with a smile invited Mabel to dance with him. For a moment, the atmosphere became especially wonderful. But before Mabel could respond, the Emperor Emeritus had already instantly stepped in front of her and sternly stopped him. "Mabel, you cannot dance with him." After all, the boy before them was not only the old fox's son. He had even once brazenly presented a marriage proposal. But unexpectedly, Enrique showed no fear at all. He said that the one he was inviting was Mabel, and only if she herself refused would he step back. The Emperor Emeritus was instantly furious. It seemed that the 3-year ban on entering the palace had still been too short. So with a dark expression, he said that if Enrique wanted to dance with Mabel, he should defeat him first. This was obviously deliberate bullying. Therefore, Enrique could only retreat dejectedly. But Mabel at the side was furious. She directly shouted that Father Emperor was an idiot. "Why are you being so mean to my friend? You scared everyone." The retired emperor was left momentarily speechless by his precious daughter's retort. The people present were even more full of disbelief. No one had expected that the stern and terrifying retired emperor would be rendered completely speechless. Behind her, Duke Donovan remained extremely calm instead, because she had long known it would turn out this way. So she directly skipped the step of teaching her how to dance. Feeling upset, Mabel noticed the young noble ladies nearby. She adopted the Duke's suggestion. She took the initiative to step forward and greeted several girls her age. All 3 of them bowed in a flustered manner, looking utterly adorable. Only Emily, Javier's daughter, remained composed like an adult. She deliberately put on an air of great familiarity, making the noble young ladies both envious and admiring. Then she naturally invited Mabel to join a tea party, but she knew she could not casually step into Javier's territory. Only after Emily said that Enrique would also be there did she hesitate and say that she would think about it. After leaving, Emily immediately returned to her unruly manner. Enrique asked what exactly she and their father were planning, and no matter what, they must not hurt Mabel. But Emily refused to say a single word and even exposed Enrique's feelings for Mabel on the spot. "When you saw His Majesty the Emperor, your eyes were practically dripping with honey. If you want to become the prince consort, shouldn't you wag your tail like a dog to please her?" Even after being humiliated like that, Enrique remained extremely calm. That, in turn, angered Emily instead. She believed she was far more outstanding than her cowardly brother Enrique, so the position of heir should have been hers. Therefore, when their father Javier came to see her and told her to get as close to Mabel as possible, Emily had already decided that she would use every possible means to prove that only she was worthy of becoming the head of the family. Under such circumstances, could Enrique save Mabel? As the 2 little ones spent more time together, they gradually became important to each other. The founding banquet came to a perfect end. Mabel was fairly satisfied with how she had performed today. Not only had she bravely greeted the members of the great families, she had also chatted with noble young ladies her age. The only person she felt sorry toward was Enrique. She decided to write an apology letter and have Oscar deliver it for her. Aiden's figure was reflected outside the window. She hurriedly ran out. She happily asked Aiden why he was here. After finding out the reason, she hurried back to her bedroom to get something. "This is for you. Open it quickly and take a look. These are grapefruit-flavored cookies." Mabel had secretly brought them back from the banquet. She had always thought Aiden liked sweets, so whenever she tasted something delicious, she wanted him to try it too. Looking at the girl's face full of anticipation, Aiden, who had never liked desserts, still forced himself to say that they were tasty. Suddenly, fireworks lit up the night sky. They were so beautiful that Mabel stared at them in a trance. Aiden, meanwhile, quietly watched her. Then he picked up the girl, who was not wearing shoes. And just like that, the 2 of them watched the entire fireworks display, delicious pastries, brilliant fireworks, and Aiden by her side. Everything she loved was right there with her. At that moment, Mabel was so happy that she could not speak. The next day, Mabel came to the first library of the Imperial Palace. She wanted to learn about this world through reading, and the only person who knew she could read was Aiden. So to outsiders, Mabel said she had come to look for a new picture book because only those with direct royal blood could enter here. Lysandra was stopped outside the door. That, instead, made it more convenient for Mabel to look for the books she needed. This place gave people the feeling of a magical library. The books were also arranged by category. She immediately noticed the shelf labeled Holy Books and Philosophy. After all, holy books were private treasures of the temple, and perhaps they could help her unravel the mystery surrounding her. Mabel tried standing on tiptoe but still could not reach, so she used her own power to make the air around her move. But just as she was about to catch that book, a blonde man snatched it first and asked, "Can you understand this?" Mabel concealed the fact that she could read, so the man said that this book was too difficult. Afterward, he picked out a fairy tale book for her, but just as Mabel was wondering who the man was, she looked up, only to find that he had vanished without a trace. Just as she was thinking about it alone, Oscar hurriedly pushed the door open and came in. "Are you alright? I heard from Uncle that a strange man appeared in the library." Mabel had not expected the story to be passed around like that and quickly said that she was fine. And looking at the books all over the bed, Oscar remarked with emotion, "You always liked having me read to you ever since you were little. Do you need me to read for you this time too?" Though Mabel could clearly read, she did not refuse. She took out The Origin of the World, the one that man had recommended just now. A very, very long time ago, God appeared in a chaos, bringing light. He took out a part of his own body. He planted many trees throughout the world and named them the trees of creation. In order to cultivate these trees better, God created gardeners. This was the origin of humanity. For thousands of years, the world remained peaceful until one day, a human coveted the immortal power of the trees of creation. Later, most of the trees of creation were eaten away by humans. As a result, the trees of creation completely disappeared from the continent. God was enraged and cast the 7 deadly sins upon humanity, and then vanished from this land. Thus, humanity began to suffer 7 punishments: pride, gluttony, envy, wrath, and also lust and greed. Mabel did not understand what this had to do with her coming here and becoming the seed of God, nor did she understand why that person had recommended this book at the time. And so the matter was left unresolved, until one day arrived. A new educational priest from the Holy Kingdom came. 3 years ago, they had demanded that Mabel acknowledge the surname Winter on the condition that she be awakened. After failing, they proposed a new condition, demanding that a priest from their country participate in her education. Their purpose was only one: to trick Mabel into going to the Holy Kingdom. But clearly, they still had not succeeded. And the one who came today had been personally appointed by the God King. So everyone was extremely nervous. They came up with all kinds of reasons, wanting to accompany her. Mabel felt she could handle it completely on her own. So after her refusals proved useless, she directly shut everyone outside the door. But what no one expected was that the priest who came this time was actually the very person she had seen in the library that day. "You still remember me? That is truly my honor." Mabel always felt that the man before her was not simple. The aura around him also gave her a sense of familiarity, as if she had already seen him at the birthday banquet. Then she voiced her suspicion. "You aren't the God King, are you?" The man let out a laugh and openly admitted his identity. "You don't need to be so wary. I won't do anything today." "Then what exactly do you want to do?" "I originally wanted to take you back while you still understood nothing, but now it seems that is not the case." Mabel's heart suddenly sank. She had wanted to pretend she did not understand, but the God King looked as though he had already seen through everything. "On the day you were born, an oracle descended, but what you do not know is that there was more to the oracle that was never made public. At the far eastern end, a seed that will save the world shall be planted. A red disaster will burn everything to ashes. At the moment when the world is on the brink of its end, the seed of the source of all things will sprout, and the blessing of creation will descend with it." From these words, it could be understood that before long, the end of the world would arrive. "Only you, Mabel, can stop all of this." But she did not believe in the gods at all. "Why should I do that? You don't even know when the end will come, do you? The signs of the end have already begun, and the spreading drought is the best proof. After that, all kinds of disasters will come one after another until the true end finally arrives. If the disasters are allowed to keep spreading, the entire world will be destroyed, not to mention Imanar. Right now, only you can save this world." From the God King's mouth, Mabel learned that the apocalypse was approaching. Her heart was suddenly filled with mixed emotions. Seeing that her complexion did not look good, Aiden spoke up to ask. But to his surprise, Mabel instead asked, "If this world were going to disappear, what would you think?" To tell the truth, the Aiden of the past would not have cared about such things. But now, he wanted to stay by Mabel's side forever. This was already obvious. He had fallen in love, but he himself still did not understand these feelings. So he chose silence. Mabel lowered her head in disappointment. But when she thought that she had already decided to protect her father and Oscar, she still felt that she could not just give up like this. "Your Majesty, didn't you ask me to investigate Javier before? Your Majesty, didn't you ask me to investigate Javier before? I found some information." Mabel instantly perked up. "Did you finally catch that old fox's weakness?" It turned out that that at the upcoming auction, a gold mine was going to be put up for auction, and Javier seemed determined to get it. For some time now, they had secretly obstructed the auction no fewer than 10 times. This time, they were also preparing to add fuel to the fire. Aiden had thought Mabel wanted to bid against him. Unexpectedly, the girl smiled with a sly look on her face. "We'll first drive the bid up really high and make him buy it. Then we'll have the field mice dig out all the gold inside, so he won't get a single piece." At this expression of hers, even Aiden could not help taking half a step back in fear. A few days later, Javier flew into a rage after being sabotaged again. Every single time, a man in a black robe would ruin his plans. Who exactly was that person? This time, because he had a reason it absolutely could not be taken away, he forcibly bought the gold mine at a price dozens of times higher than the market rate. It was infuriating. At this moment, the butler suggested that they could commission the Bell Intelligence Organization to investigate that black-robed man. Javier immediately revealed a malicious smile and adopted the suggestion, though he still intended to hide his identity. However, it was not long before Mabel learned of this news. This was simply courting death. It just so happened that this was a good opportunity to have Cassie approach him and gain his trust. Just then, a field mouse suddenly appeared. It turned out that while mining gold, it had discovered a strange object. Mabel had originally thought it was just an ordinary stone, but the next second, she remembered that it looked very similar to the holy relic sent by the Holy Kingdom. That feeling was too painful, and it instantly made her afraid to reach out and touch it. She told Aiden her guess. Only then did the boy remember that the investigation report had mentioned that Javier had bought the mine as if he were searching for something. Could it be that this was what he was after? If that were true, then Javier's real purpose would become even harder to grasp. So Mabel decided to find a way to get close to Duke Javier's residence. There definitely had to be some unspeakable secret hidden there. Mabel suddenly thought of a good idea. So, excitedly, she reached out to tug at Aiden, but unexpectedly, the retired emperor suddenly appeared. Still the same old formula. With a heartbroken face, he shouted, "This is your first outing. How can you not go with your father, but go with this guy instead?" The two of them had already been father and daughter for 5 years. So Mabel knew very well how to coax this old father. So she said she would go on 2 outings with Daddy. Sure enough, the moment the retired emperor heard that, he immediately beamed with joy. Afterward, Mabel went to find Oscar. Using the excuse that she wanted to become closer to Emily, she expressed her wish to go to Duke Javier's residence. Oscar instinctively wanted to refuse, but in the end, he still could not withstand his younger sisters acting cute, so he agreed to help her write a letter. "However, it's still too dangerous for you to go alone. I'll go with you." But unexpectedly, Mabel immediately refused. "No need, I've already agreed to go with Aiden." After saying thank you, she immediately left without even turning her head back, leaving only Oscar standing there, petrified on the spot. That night, the father and son came to Mabel's door. When they pushed the door open and entered, they found that she was already fast asleep. After gently tucking the blanket around his daughter, the retired emperor picked up the drawings placed to the side and examined them carefully. But every single one was too abstract. No matter how he looked at them, they did not seem related to any plan to investigate Duke Javier's residence. And another drawing was of the divine beast Mimi, but the two of them insisted on guessing it was Enrique's blonde hair. So with faces full of disgust, they tossed the drawing aside. Afterward, Oscar immediately began to complain. Mabel is actually going to the tea party with that brat Aiden. The two of them instantly wilted, but the retired emperor still helplessly stated the reality. That boy has been affected by Bellen's magic and will slaughter wildly after losing his reason. Only by staying near Mabel can he remain sane. So even if we want to separate the two of them, safety must come first. Only after reaching a consensus did they leave the room. And Mabel also learned the true reason that boy had come here. So the next day, she took the initiative to hold Aiden's hand. She thought that this kind of contact might make Aiden feel a little better, but unexpectedly, the boy suddenly stopped walking. He even let go of her hand. Could it be that this made him unhappy? Unexpectedly, the very next second, Aiden held Mabel's hand instead. The atmosphere between the two of them instantly became especially beautiful. However, at a time like this, the retired emperor was of course never absent, and immediately pulled his daughter's hand back. "Mabel, you still don't know we're not going to the meeting room today, right? Come with Daddy." After saying that, he even turned back to warn Aiden. However, today's schedule once again refreshed Mabel's understanding of the Empire's ministers. The 5-year-old little emperor deeply experienced what true madness meant. Just now, Mabel was pulled into a room by her father. When she saw the minister seated below, packed to the brim, she instantly had a bad feeling. Sure enough, the very next second, the aide spoke. "The auction of the Emperor's treasured possessions is about to begin." Then he confidently made a gesture, as if asking for praise. It turned out that just a few days earlier, Mabel had gone to see him. She had hoped to sell some things around her that she no longer needed, to exchange them for a bit of money to help those children who had no water to drink. At that moment, Mabel's image in the aide's heart rose several more levels. She was simply a saint among sage rulers. So he patted his chest and promised that he would definitely sell these items at a high price. Time returned to the present. Mabel was practically going crazy. Those kinds of things had actually been brought out for an auction. She wanted her father to help stop it, but when she turned around, she discovered that he had already taken a seat in the bidding section. The auction of the Emperor's treasured possessions now officially begins. At that command, the entire venue instantly erupted, and the first item up for auction was Mabel's kitten doll. Because she had played with it ever since childhood, it was already somewhat worn out. However, everyone below the stage looked ready to spring into action. She had thought that no one would want such a thing even for a single gold coin. Unexpectedly, the price climbed all the way from 1 gold coin to 1,000 gold coins. In the end, the retired emperor directly raised his paddle, 10,000 gold coins. As expected, he won it on the spot. The second item was a painting Mabel had made of the imperial courtyard. In the end, it too was bought by the retired emperor for 50,000 gold coins. Next came a rattle, a cloak, and the little leather shoes she had worn as a child. The retired emperor crushed all competition with astonishingly high prices. Her grandfather was so angry that he shouted on the spot that this was unfair. So the people at the scene also began to complain in dissatisfaction. "Your Majesty, please help us." In order to raise money from other people, Mabel directly announced that the retired emperor could no longer participate in the bidding, and the atmosphere at the venue finally became much more harmonious. Soon it came to the final auction item. This is a raw stone bracelet handmade by Her Majesty. The aide introduced it in an extremely exaggerated tone. "There will absolutely never be another one like this." And everyone began secretly competing with one another. They were determined to snatch it and make it a family heirloom. As the aide announced the start of bidding, the atmosphere at the venue was instantly pushed to its peak. In the end, it even reached the sky-high price of 100,000 gold coins. Turning her head, Mabel could not help complaining. How does this country even function, where some are happy, naturally others are troubled? Suddenly, someone hurried up to Mabel and said with a choked voice, "I originally wanted to buy one of your Majesty's treasured possessions today and pass it down to the next generation as a family heirloom, but I didn't manage to get a single one. I just feel that if I go back like this, I will definitely regret it, because the wish of my entire life is to touch your Majesty's head just once." At once, a commotion swept through the whole venue. Seeing that the retired emperor was about to rush over and hit someone, the aide quickly stopped him. Mabel felt that being touched on the head in public would affect her dignity, so she refused decisively, and just as the man was so disappointed he was about to cry, Mabel instead told him to hold out his hand. Smiling, she said, "We can shake hands like this." In an instant, the whole venue completely exploded, and everyone swarmed toward Mabel. They even consciously formed a line. One after another, they began shaking her hand. The retired emperor was furious. Only he, as her father, had the right to hold hands. So he suddenly revealed a wicked grin and said, "From now on, anyone who touches the emperor must pay a fine." Everyone was stunned on the spot, and the retired emperor became even more pleased with himself. A minister had already taken out his money pouch and said excitedly, "So as long as we pay a fine, we can shake hands with your Majesty. I'll go first." And so the hottest item of the day became Her Majesty the walking fine, and the national treasury became rich in an instant. The 5-year-old little emperor prepared to sneak into the old fox's residence to investigate. Enrique, upon receiving the reply, froze on the spot. He stormed up to his younger sister, wanting an answer. Would she really be attending today's tea party? After receiving a positive answer, Enrique immediately warned her, saying that she was not a good person. Don't cause her trouble. However, Emily did not react in the slightest. Instead, she told her brother to recognize his own identity. Very soon, Mabel arrived here. As the host of the party, Emily behaved very appropriately. This made Mabel sincerely admire her. "I didn't expect you to be able to host such a wonderful tea party already. That's really amazing. What ill intentions could a child possibly have?" Emily remembered what her brother had said, that she was a good person. She unexpectedly found herself agreeing with it as well. And as Mabel looked at this beautiful scene, she could not help sighing inwardly that girls were just too adorable. But now it was also time to begin carrying out the plan. She shot Aiden a meaningful glance. Then she pretended to accidentally knock over her teacup. Using the excuse that she needed to wash her hands and refusing Emily's company, she left with the guards, and the first stage of the operation was to lure Lysandro away. So Mabel said that her favorite little bear ring was missing, looking as if she were about to cry the next second. Seeing this, Lysandro immediately agreed to help look for it. Aiden then pointed to the distant bushes and said there seemed to be something shiny over there. Sure enough, under the two of them's diversionary tactic, Lysandro pulled Aiden along and hurried toward the bushes. And Mabel finally got her wish to act alone. Now they had reached the second stage, which was to find the residence's stables. Because the mine was very far away, she would need transportation to get there. Relying on her own abilities, Mabel successfully found the stables. Although her attempt to cozy up failed, that did not stump her at all. After all, she had several years of experience feeding animals. She took out lots of sugar cubes from her bag. In an instant, all the horses became wildly excited. And just like that, the information was coaxed out with ease. As expected, Javier really had paid a huge sum for the gold mine because of that stone, and as long as she could confirm the origin of that stone, she would be able to know what exactly the old fox was plotting. But just then, the sound of two men talking came from outside the door. Mabel instantly panicked. She had to quickly find a place to hide. Just as she was about to be discovered, a hand suddenly pulled her over, and that person was actually Enrique. Relying on his familiarity with the place, the boy successfully led Mabel out. Only after coming back to his senses did did he realize that he had been holding her hand the whole time. He instantly sprang up. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done such a thing on my own. Please forgive me." Mabel did not take it to heart. She only smiled and said it was fine. However, Enrique was somewhat puzzled as to why she had appeared there. It had seemed like she had just been talking with someone. Mabel could only lie, saying that the residence was so beautiful that she had gotten lost while wandering around. However, Enrique seemed to want to keep asking, but at that moment, Aiden suddenly appeared. Her Majesty is already feeling troubled. Can't you tell? Male lead number 1 and male lead number 2 had finally officially met. From the moment they appeared, the smell of gunpowder was overwhelming. "You are Dublin's devil. What a pity. I threw away that nickname long ago." Really? Can something like that truly be thrown away? The atmosphere between the two instantly turned tense and hostile. Mabel felt as if she were about to be squashed into a sandwich cookie. However, Aiden directly told Enrique to get lost. But this was clearly Enrique's territory. Mabel hurriedly said, "If anyone should get lost, it should be us." To prevent the two from really starting a fight, Mabel immediately said goodbye to Enrique, then turned around and pulled Aiden back to the tea party. Along the way, she earnestly tried to persuade him, hoping Aiden would not act like today anymore. After all, Enrique was a friend. However, just as the two of them stepped into the courtyard, they heard from afar the young lady of the Mitron family talking about Aiden. How can Dublin's dog attend a tea party and even become the Emperor's guard? Isn't that hilarious? As soon as Mabel heard this, she immediately turned to look at Aiden, afraid that these words would wound him. But the boy did not react in the slightest, because he had heard it too many times and had long since grown used to it. Mabel's heart could not help aching. She walked straight up and said, "What interesting thing are you talking about? Let me hear it too." Miss Mitron lied, without changing her expression, saying that they were just talking about fashionable hairbands lately. Really? How strange. Our Aiden is not a hairband. In pure bloodline, unqualified. Are you insulting my hearing? Emily sensed that the atmosphere here was wrong, and hurried over to ask what had happened. Mabel immediately took her leave, saying that Miss Mitron felt Aiden was not qualified to stay here. "A minister's shortcomings are my shortcomings, so naturally I am also not qualified to continue staying here." Mitron still wanted to argue for herself, but Emily sharply interrupted her, apologized to Her Majesty and Aiden immediately. Only then did Mitron lower her head unwillingly, and it was obvious at a glance that she was not sincere. After saying goodbye to Emily, Mabel took Aiden and got onto the carriage back, although the boy remained very calm throughout. Mabel simply could not swallow this insult. Last time, she had heard that Count Mitron was very close to the old fox, and was also running illegal large-scale entertainment venues and auction houses. So she decided to start with Count Mitron. "It seems our organization will soon become rich. Here it comes, here it comes." The little emperor's first experience of confiscating a household officially begins. And the reason she was doing this was also to vent Aiden's anger for him. "I already said that through investigation, it has been learned that Count Mitron has colluded with the old fox, selling fake goods, moving money around, and splitting the stolen profits. In other words, as long as they caught Mitron, it would be equivalent to directly cutting off the old fox's financial chain." The next day, Mabel arrived at the Count's residence. The Count and his wife had also already heard about what their daughter had done. Although they did not feel in their hearts that there was anything wrong with it, they still took the little Emperor's dignity into account, and had her apologize to Aiden, whom she had always looked down on. Mabel did not continue wasting time either. She walked straight in. It was visible to the naked eye that the scale of the Count's residence was quite imposing. This made Mabel very satisfied. Seizing it and using it as the organization's office location would be just perfect. So she turned to Aiden and said, "Now you can go bring the things we prepared." Very soon, a disheveled man appeared there, crying and shouting that he wanted to see Her Majesty the Emperor. Mitron's face instantly darkened. He hurriedly ordered the guards to take the man away, but Mabel suddenly stopped them. "Wait, I'd like to hear what he has to say." The man's name was Hansen, and he worked at an entertainment venue run by Count Mitron. This time, he appeared here to expose the Count's corrupt practices. That entertainment venue appeared to operate legally on the surface, but in reality, it secretly manipulated outcomes and accepted bribes. And he was the very person responsible for falsifying the accounts. Mitron realized things were going badly and wanted to stop the man from continuing, but he was immediately rebuked on the spot. "Are you trying to go against His Majesty's decree?" Under Lysandro's absolute martial pressure, Mitron finally did not dare to speak again. Originally, Hansen had also wanted to resign and stop doing such things against his conscience. But how could Mitron possibly agree? He abducted Hansen's family and used them as a threat. With nowhere left to turn, Hansen finally brought the matter before Mabel. Mitron still tried to turn the accusation back on him, but the man pulled out a double set of account books from his chest. A thick volume, enough to prove Mitron's crimes. After saying all this, he was taken away by Lysandro. Mabel was very pleased with this. Smiling, she said to Aiden, "We really are the best partners." Afterward, the disgraced Mitron went to Javier for help, but he could not even get through the door. After all, to that old fox, he no longer had any value. Javier had originally thought he could stay above it all, but unexpectedly, None of the money he had invested in the entertainment venue could be recovered. And just now, it happened to be time to repay his debts. He suddenly remembered the gold mine he had bought at an enormous price and wondered why there had been no news for so long. But the reply he received was that no matter how deep they dug, they had not seen any gold. The old fox was so furious, he nearly spat out a mouthful of blood. After all, as the head of the Javier family, once news spread that they were applying for an extension on debt repayment, the family's reputation would be completely ruined. Just then, someone calling himself Ace arrived. The old fox instantly beamed with delight, as if he had seized a life-saving straw. But little did he know that it was actually the beginning of irreversible doom. The little emperor used a small trick and easily confiscated the count's estate. He directly cut off the old fox's chain of funding. He even had Cassie approach the old fox in advance, and by selling information, he gained his trust. Now, this was exactly when he was most short of funds. For Cassie to come to his door at this time was the best possible moment to make him fall completely into the trap. So Cassie lied, claiming that Maitreyan had previously spread word to the outside world that Javier had invested a huge sum of money into the auction house. Now that the other investors had suffered devastating losses, they would probably come to trouble him very soon. "But you need not worry, my lord. Don't you still have me?" Cassie took the initiative to state that he came from the Bell Intelligence Group. The old fox immediately believed the truth of what he was saying. "You must be in great need of money right now, and Bell provides aid to those who urgently need funds. I think we should be able to help you." With no other way out, the old fox could only obediently sign the IOU. Everything was within Mabel's plan. Just then, the aide arrived. The moment Mabel saw him, she thought of what had happened at the auction. Father had spent so much money at the auction that he must have become a pauper by now, so she was still a little angry inside. The aide hurried forward to coax the child. He said he had brought a gift and hoped to be forgiven. When the gift box was opened, what came into view was a pair of delicate and adorable little leather shoes. Obviously, Mabel was very satisfied. She even haughtily expressed her thanks. But when she jumped down from the sofa, she froze on the spot. The shoes actually made a squeaky clattering sound. In complete contrast to her was the aide, whose face was full of excitement. This pair of shoes was practically tailor-made for her. This made Mabel so angry that she grabbed one shoe and chased after him, hitting him with it. After that, for a long period of time, everyone started giving her shoes that made noise. It left her feeling exhausted all over. And all of this was Gustav's fault. Mabel wore a troubled expression, but Oscar still really wanted to see what his little sister looked like walking in those shoes. Just imagining it made her unbearably adorable. Mabel was so angry that she fled the scene on the spot. While the two were happily playing around in the yard, Mabel suddenly saw her father not far away. She happily greeted him. That face, which was growing more and more like her mother's, made the Emperor Emeritus freeze on the spot. Amid the light and shadows, it was as if his wife had never left. But when Mabel asked him what was wrong, he came back to his senses from that beautiful illusion. The Emperor Emeritus's eyes suddenly turned red. Then he turned around and left in loneliness. The little emperor was about to begin a formal education. When he learned that the teacher was not an ordinary professor, but the academy's highest authority, the dean instantly felt the pressure max out. He even subconsciously wanted to refuse. He even said he wanted to study under Lissandro together with Oscar. This made Lissandro so excited he could hardly contain himself. He immediately shouted at the top of his lungs, "Long live!" After saying that, he happily ran, obviously intending to go show off to others. The Academy Dean Franz was secretly feeling proud. Having been called a genius since childhood, he had now actually become the Emperor's teacher. Not only had his annual salary multiplied several times, but food, clothing, housing, and transportation were all included for free. He believed that the little emperor was too young, and there was basically nothing to teach. If he taught just one character a day, he could easily coast by collecting his salary. Although the outside world kept saying the emperor was a genius, he did not believe even a punctuation mark of it. "Greetings, your majesty, the emperor. I am Franz, the dean of the academy." Mabel greeted him very straightforwardly. She treated him as if he were someone her own age. However, this immediately aroused the man's dissatisfaction. He felt he was being slighted, so he decided to seize the initiative. "Forgive my boldness. I know you are the supreme emperor. However, I have come here in the capacity of your teacher. Therefore, please observe the proper etiquette due when facing a teacher." Although Mabel did not want to settle on that so early, she still obediently addressed him as teacher. Franz then took out the fairy tale book he had prepared. Obviously, he was treating the girl like an ordinary child, and Mabel immediately raised her hand to say she wanted to study something else. But the man treated her like an immature child and thought she was just being unreasonable. "So, what would you like to study?" Mabel said crisply, the drawbacks of Bordosism advocated by Agorchikov. The man was instantly dumbfounded, but Mabel gave him no room. "You don't mean to say you don't know, do you? Oscar read that book when he was very young." Franz found it unbelievable. That was a book only the Academy's upper division students could understand. So he actually began scolding her directly. "No matter how unwilling your majesty is to read fairy tales, you cannot lie. What is most detestable is not stupidity, but willfulness." Mabel angrily retorted that she was not lying. The atmosphere between the two instantly became tense, like drawn swords and bent bows. "It seems you have not yet learned words. only stubbornness. Words? I only need one look to memorize them. You must be joking again. If you really can memorize it after one look, then I will grant you one wish. Without even thinking, Mabel agreed. This made the man extremely smug. It seemed he was about to become rich overnight. But in the end, the result not only slapped him hard in the face, it even turned him from a favored genius into a slave. The little emperor and the genius dean made a bet. As long as she looked once, she could remember an entire page of text. Whoever lost had to fulfill one wish of the other. But unexpectedly, in just 1 minute, Mabel actually wrote it down word for word. Yet at this moment, Franz still had not realized the seriousness of the situation. He thought a child's wish would be nothing more than dolls and accessories, but Mabel instead had Aiden bring over a sheet of paper. And it was not an ordinary piece of paper, but a blank slave contract obtained from the Mitron auction house. Although the man knew what it was, he could only sign his name. After all, Aiden standing behind Mabel looked as if he would take his life if he did not sign. Mabel looked with satisfaction at the name on the paper. After learning that the teacher was good at mathematics, she began to scheme a little. She turned and leaned close to Aiden's ear and said, "Let the teacher become the accountant for the Bell organization and give him a little more money." And just like that, instead of continuing as a perfectly good dean, he directly became a slave. The next day, as usual, Oscar came to see Mabel because he knew that a letter from Enrique had arrived. At the thought that the two of them could once again spend happy time together writing letters, he was especially excited. But when he pushed the door open, he discovered that his younger sister was already writing with her head lowered, and it was even a reply to Enrique. He instantly felt as if struck by lightning. He threw out a line, "You're too much," then turned and left in dejection. Straightforward, Mabel had absolutely no idea what had happened, but her personal maid and attendant both said it was her fault. There are 2 reasons why His Highness the Prince said you were too much. The first is that His Highness had always been looking forward to reading your letters to you, and to the time spent writing replies for you. But now, you no longer need him, so that is why he is so sad. Mabel truly had not expected that. She had always thought she was troubling Oscar. Now that she thought back on it, Oscar always had a smile on his face when helping write replies. Then what is the second reason? It is because the first letter your majesty wrote by hand was not written to His Highness the Prince. After all, a first time carries special meaning, so he must have always been looking forward to receiving it. Mabel knew that she had done wrong. She immediately jumped down from the chair and wanted to go comfort Oscar. But for many days in a row, she could not find any trace of him. Sure enough, he was deliberately hiding. Now things were truly completely ruined. Mabel decided to buy a meaningful gift. She only hoped that after Oscar received it, he would calm down a little. However, after browsing for a long time, she still did not know what to buy. She suddenly felt somewhat dejected. "I really am a terrible younger sister. I do not even know what Oscar likes." The maid comforted her, saying that as long as it was from her, His Highness the Prince would like it. But Mabel did not want that. What she wanted to give was something Oscar truly liked. However, just then, a harsh slapping sound suddenly came from behind her. That sound instantly stirred up memories Mabel had almost forgotten. The little emperor was actually so startled by that slap that she lost focus. To her, it was a sound so terrifying it made one want to cover one's ears. It was also the sound that, as Yoon Dong-chin in her childhood, she had wanted to escape from, yet had never been able to escape. Mabel was immersed in her memories and could not let go of them for a long time. It was not until Aiden noticed something unusual that she finally came back to her senses. She always had a feeling that as long as she saw Aiden, she would feel especially at ease. She comforted herself that everything was fine. The current her already had a real family. Those things were all in the past now. So she strode in the direction the sound had come from. She wanted to see who exactly was being so violent, but she had not expected that the person being beaten was Enrique. It turned out that just 3 hours earlier, Javier had exceptionally brought Enrique to a clothing store to buy new clothes. He had even told him to change into them and wear them out directly. Enrique was extremely puzzled. Hadn't the family's financial problems already become so serious that they had to sell the southern villa? Why, then, was his father in such a good mood today instead? Could it be that the problem had already been solved? He was just about to ask clearly when he was first scolded for walking too slowly. The two of them then walked into a place that looked extremely high-end. After that, Javier introduced him to a man and explained the purpose of coming there today. "I called you here today because there is a very interesting enterprise. It just requires a bit too much capital." The man immediately understood that Javier had come to borrow money, yet did not mind in the slightest. Only, as he spoke, his gaze would occasionally fall on Enrique. The boy only felt uncomfortable all over. He just wanted to leave here as quickly as possible. But unexpectedly, after the two had reached an agreement, Javier actually told Enrique to stay behind and chat with the man. "Do not be rude to Baron Carapi." The moment he heard that name, Enrique's whole body went rigid. According to rumors, Baron Carapi liked pampered young noble masters most of all. He had even been expelled from high society because of it. Yet now, even though his father clearly knew all this, he still did this. A strong wave of disgust immediately churned in his heart. Enrique was utterly disheartened. He had never expected his own father to be this kind of trash. At that moment, he suddenly missed Mabel very much. "I am very sorry, Baron, but I do not think I can keep you company in conversation, so I will take my leave first. After saying that, Enrique turned and left. He completely ignored Javier's furious roar behind him. The old fox was completely enraged. He had finally found such a sucker with great difficulty, and it had actually been ruined just like this. So, blow after blow, he vented all his anger onto Enrique's face. He had no intention of stopping even after the corners of his mouth had been beaten until they bled. But in the next second, Javier's whole body was suddenly sent flying. And at that very moment, Mabel also suddenly appeared here. The little emperor accidentally saw her good friend being beaten. Without a second thought, she suddenly rushed forward and took that slap for the boy. In an instant, her whole body was sent flying. After that, before anyone had even had time to react, she clutched her injured arm and burst into loud tears. And she kept shouting, "It hurts, it hurts." Enrique rushed up immediately to check on her. And the others also hurried over at once upon hearing the commotion, especially when they saw that His Majesty the Emperor, who had hardly cried at all since childhood, was now actually crying this heartbreakingly. Everyone's faces were filled with shock. Lysandro quickly stepped forward and demanded to know what had happened. Mabel directly sniffled and complained. "It was Duke Javier. He hit me." Lysandro's anger had reached the extreme at this moment. He wanted nothing more than to tear that old fox to pieces on the spot. And in order to completely cement Javier's guilt, Mabel also acted childishly for once in a blue moon. At this point, Lysandro no longer cared to investigate the truth. He directly threw the man into prison on the charge of plotting against the royal family. Everything had happened too fast, so fast that Enrique had not even had time to react. Then Mabel gently held his hand and comforted him. "There are no bugs now, so do not cry anymore." From this moment on, Mabel became, in Enrique's dark life, the only dazzling ray of light. And Aiden knew that all of this was an act by Mabel. But at the moment he saw the wound on her hand, he still felt an impulse to destroy everyone. But he knew that he could not do that, because if he did, Mabel would hate him. That night, he took a medicine box and went to find Mabel. The moment he entered, he saw the girl using a pillow as that old fox and venting her anger on it. He instantly regretted not having killed that old fox on the spot just now. "Do not be angry anymore. Leave Duke Javier to me." "No need, because he has already been imprisoned for the crime of plotting against the royal family." "But what is that?" Without saying a word, Aiden directly began rummaging through the medicine box. This left Mabel completely confused, because even now, she still had not noticed that she was injured. Aiden had already expected that, so that was why he had taken the initiative to come and bandage her up. Looking at the boy's serious and focused expression, Mabel smiled with relief. She had not expected that cold Aiden also had such a careful and gentle side. But when she saw her hand wrapped up like a rice dumpling, she was instantly dumbfounded. Isn't this a bit too exaggerated? Who knew that the boy had already thought everything through? It had to look serious at a glance. After all, only if rumors spread that Her Majesty was seriously injured would the blow to the Duke be even heavier. Mabel listened with a face full of shock. She had not expected that Aiden was even better at deceiving people than she was. For the sake of her friend, the little emperor set up the old fox. She created the false impression that she had been badly injured from the beating. When the Emperor Emeritus learned of all this, he was furious to the extreme. Someone had actually dared to lay hands on Mabel. That was the daughter most cherished by himself and Senna. He anxiously pushed open the door. When he saw the hand of his daughter wrapped all over in bandages, the heartache and anger in his eyes nearly overflowed. What exactly happened? Hurt like this? It must hurt a lot, right? Mabel said with her mouth that it hurt a little, but in truth it did not hurt at all. But when she saw her father slumped over by the bedside in dejection, her heart instantly filled with guilt. She worriedly patted his head and comforted him softly. At that moment, the Emperor Emeritus once again saw the shadow of his late wife in Mabel. "I only turned out like this because I suddenly let my guard down. Don't worry, but Javier actually dared to harm the Emperor of the Empire. I will absolutely not forgive him. Leave the rest to Dad, and you just rest well." Mabel hesitated for a moment, but still called out to her father, who was about to leave. After the Duke is punished and returns home, what will happen to Enrique? She knew that old fox was powerful and influential, and it was impossible for him to be stripped of his status, like Count Maitrin. When that time came, Enrique would definitely suffer even worse abuse. "Don't think too much about it. Dad will arrange everything properly." After the Emperor Emeritus left the room, Mabel began to let her thoughts run wild. Dad looked very strange just now, as if he were feeling unwell somewhere. She decided that after this matter was over, she would spend proper time with Dad and Oscar. Suddenly, she sat up in excitement. She had just remembered that she had not prepared Oscar's gift yet, so she immediately got out of bed, preparing to call Aiden and secretly go out together. But when she opened the door, she unexpectedly saw Oscar outside. "I heard Duke Javier laid hands on you. Are you alright?" Mabel immediately lowered her head and apologized. "I'm sorry. I originally wanted to go out and buy you a gift, but I didn't manage to buy anything." "My gift? Why would you buy me a gift? Didn't I make you angry?" "So, I thought that compared to writing a letter, a gift would be more meaningful. It was my fault. Please don't hate me." Oscar, who had been silent all along, suddenly could not hold it in anymore. He bent down and pulled Mabel into his arms. I don't need a gift. I just thought I was foolish for getting jealous over something like that. That's why I avoided you. How could I possibly hate you? You are my only little sister. At last, the two of them cleared up their misunderstanding at this moment and happily embraced each other. And thinking that the Emperor Emeritus's condition just now had been truly strange, Mabel still asked about it. Dad, did something happen? I feel like he looked very tired. The young emperor was injured because of that old fox. This matter made the Emperor Emeritus furious. Sword in hand, he charged straight into the prison. With a dark expression, he stared at Javier on the ground and said, "Was it that hand that injured my daughter?" The old fox knew that the Emperor Emeritus was already enraged to the extreme. One wrong move, and he might lose his life here. So, in order not to provoke the Emperor Emeritus any further, he tried to explain in what he believed were the mildest possible words. I truly did not lay a hand on Her Majesty the Emperor. I know you dote on Her Majesty the Emperor, but you cannot possibly listen only to her side of the story. The Emperor Emeritus did not give him even the slightest chance to catch his breath and directly summoned a witness. That witness was his son, Enrique. The old fox immediately shouted excitedly, "That's right, my son. He was there at the scene and can testify for me." Looking at Enrique's badly swollen face, even the Emperor Emeritus could not help but feel distressed. He had not expected Javier to be so heartless, to strike such a young child so viciously. Enrique, Javier. Mabel said she only wanted to stop Javier from hitting you. And then Javier started punching and kicking her. Is that true? The old fox was truly panicking and hurriedly tried to explain first, saying that he was only disciplining his son. It was Her Majesty the Emperor who suddenly rushed over, and that was why he fell. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and tell the truth. At this moment, Enrique slowly spoke. It was father losing his reason that led to Her Majesty the Emperor, who rushed over, being injured. Although father has committed a grave crime, I still ask that you show leniency for the sake of our family's merits. Javier could hardly believe it. He immediately tried to strike Enrique again, but the Emperor Emeritus stopped him on the spot. I have already heard the witness's testimony. I declare that from this moment on, you are removed from your seat in the council. I will never allow you to appear near Mabel again. Javier naturally refused to accept such punishment, but unexpectedly, the Emperor Emeritus's punishment was far from over. In addition, you will be confined to your estate. From now on, you are not to leave Javier territory by even a single step. This was almost no different from exile, but no matter how he resisted, the Emperor Emeritus could not even be bothered to spare him a glance. Are you satisfied now? Using false testimony to have your overbearing and tyrannical father placed under house arrest. So this was the real truth of the matter. In fact, the Emperor Emeritus had always known it clearly, because he received real-time reports about Mabel. Even if Her Majesty the Emperor lies, you do not care? Of course, because it is a benevolent lie. Only then did Enrique understand. The reason Mabel could be so bright and kind was because she possessed the unconditional trust of her family. Thinking of this, he could not help but let out a soft laugh. But he was inadvertently noticed by the Emperor Emeritus and immediately received a warning. Enrique, Javier, don't be too greedy. The father, the Emperor Emeritus, who cherished her beyond measure, would actually draw his blade against her. Just now, Mabel checked the organization's recent accounts. She discovered that under the leadership of Vice President Cassie, the Bell organization had become so wealthy in such a short time. Among them was even a highly valuable list. It was the list of nobles who had borrowed money from the Bell organization. After losing everything at entertainment venues, from the very beginning, her goal had not been money, but to use this to grasp their weaknesses. Now, the more they borrowed, the better. By the way, is teacher working seriously? Yes, although he was extremely dissatisfied at first. But the moment he heard about the salary, he was overjoyed. Clearly, all of this was within Mabel's expectations. Afterward, she asked Aiden again about the stone found in that old fox's mine. After looking at it before, it seemed to be just an ordinary mineral, and there were no other findings. Even though Mabel felt it was very similar to the sacred relic from before, she could only let it go for now. And seeing that Mabel was preparing to leave, Aiden hurriedly asked where she was going. The girl said with a smile, "Although it's a little late, I want to have tea with Dad. Then I will go protect the two of you." "No need. You should go rest. With Dad there, there's nothing to worry about." Seeing that Mabel would not agree, Aiden used the excuse that she was currently claiming to the outside world that she was seriously injured, and as he wished, carried her to the Emperor Emeritus's bedroom. "Is Dad here? I only saw Gustav in the office. His Majesty the Emperor Emeritus has already gone to rest." Mabel found it very strange. Hasn't Dad been very busy lately? How could he have gone to sleep so early? Combined with his listless state recently, Mabel, still worried, decided to go in and take a look. But the Emperor Emeritus had never allowed anyone into his bedroom. Under Mabel's repeated insistence, Lysandro also felt that, in the end, the Emperor Emeritus made an exception for Mabel. Therefore, he still let her go in for a look. This was also Mabel's first time coming here. Strangely, the entire room was filled with smoke. It made one's whole body feel rather uncomfortable. She carefully climbed onto a chair, wanting to see whether Dad was feeling unwell somewhere. However, at the moment her hand touched the Emperor Emeritus. He unexpectedly grabbed her with his backhand pull, and that sharp sword was pressed against her throat just like that. It even cut a wound. "Who is it? How dare you intrude into my bedchamber?" The next second, he froze. "Is it you, Senna?" At the moment the smoke cleared, he finally saw clearly that the person before him was actually Mabel. He did not know what exactly he had just done. He had nearly killed with his own hands the daughter he loved most. And Mabel was also terrified to the extreme. The scenes of being beaten in her previous life overlapped in her mind once again. The next second, the Emperor Emeritus pulled her into his arms. Only then did he gradually come back to his senses. "I'm sorry, Mabel." The Emperor Emeritus apologized again and again. He even lowered his head in pain. Mabel knew that Dad must have had his own unspeakable reasons. She smiled, gently rubbed his head, and softly comforted him. "I sneaked in, so I must have startled Dad, right? I'm sorry, it's my fault." At this moment, father and daughter held each other tightly, soothing each other's wounded hearts. And at this moment, the girl also made up her mind to save this world, and only she could do this. Today, as expected, it was time for her lesson with the High Priest. Mabel's appearance, wrapped all over in bandages, naturally aroused the man's suspicion, and she touched the place on her neck that Dad had cut, pausing slightly. She only said that she had accidentally fallen. The Divine King said nothing, and directly used divine power to remove all the bandages. The next second, those wounds of all sizes and kinds instantly disappeared without a trace. "You must be more careful, because you cannot heal your own wounds." Mabel was puzzled about the real reason, but even the Divine King did not know clearly, only that this kind of situation appeared occasionally. Originally, Mabel did not want to ask this annoying man for help, but now, perhaps only he knew the truth. So Mabel took out a bag. Even the Divine King was visibly startled after opening it. "I originally wanted to investigate what exactly this thing was, but I couldn't find anything. By the way, didn't you give me one exactly like this before? Is this also a sacred relic?" It turned out that what the Divine King had sent before was a processed finished product that could be absorbed immediately. And this one was its raw stone. To be exact, it was the essence of the world creation tree, also called moonstone. Nowadays, most of the world creation trees in the world have already disappeared, but some of their essence still remains to this day. And it is precisely because of them that nature has been able to continue existing. But as the essence continues to be destroyed, nature is also gradually losing the power of the gods. And behind all of this, someone is deliberately causing destruction. At first, it manifests as drought. In the end, a terrifying apocalypse will arrive. At this moment, Mabel still could not truly comprehend the weight of the word apocalypse. But the moment she thought that this world would completely disappear, she became unbearably sad. She wanted to protect everyone and protect this hard-won happiness. "What should I do to stop the apocalypse from coming?" The Divine King smiled in satisfaction. It seemed that this little one was finally willing to listen to him. "You must find the essence before it is destroyed and absorb it. And the only ones who can find the essence are you and me. However, this must be done personally by you, the master of the Divine Oracle." This made Mabel even more confused. If that was the case, why was Javier collecting the essence? Could it be that he was connected to the drought? On the other side, the imprisoned Javier was filled with anger. Then, he slowly took out a black crystal ball from the drawer. Before long, that old fox used the crystal ball to make a video call with King Dublin. "Duke Javier, how many moonstones have you found?" "I found 2. This is truly terrible. I'm trying my best to find more, and there will be good news soon. But I can't leave the territory right now. So, I would like to ask for your help." The former emperor's unusual behavior was finally noticed by the young emperor. Mabel had been in a very bad mood lately. Her observant older brother also noticed that something was wrong with her. So, he invited her to go to the lakeside for a relaxing outing. Mabel was very happy about this. The two of them also spent a fairly pleasant picnic together. But in Mabel's heart, she was always worried about her father. He had been very strange lately, and ever since that day, he had never come to see her again. If it had been before, he would have come after her the moment he learned she was going on an outing. Oscar naturally also noticed the change in their father, but he still comforted Mabel. Their father had just been busy with state affairs lately. Once he finished, he would come see her. But Mabel was still very worried. She knew that her father had become like this because of what happened that day. The name Senna that her father cried out while out of his mind was the very name of the biological mother Mabel knew absolutely nothing about. From childhood to adulthood, she had always been carefully looked after by her nurse and family. So regarding the absence of her mother, it seemed she had never truly been curious. But now, she wanted to know everything about her mother. "Oscar, what kind of person was my mother?" "She was a very gentle person. Although I wasn't her biological child, she still sincerely worried about me and always took care of me. But when I was little, because I was immature, I cried and made a fuss wanting something that belonged to someone else. She still scolded me sternly. Although she was gentle, when it came to mistakes, she was especially strict." Watching the smile that naturally appeared on Oscar's face, Mabel became even more curious about what kind of person her mother really was. On the other side, When the former emperor learned that Mabel and Oscar had gone out on an outing, he was full of regret because he could not be by her side. Suddenly, he remembered the last accident again. Lysandro, you shouldn't have let Mabel come in that day. Although he said that, he actually understood it himself as well. Lysandro alone could never have stopped Mabel. The way she had looked then was exactly the same as Senna. The moment he thought of Senna, complicated emotions surged through his heart. Recently, he kept feeling that his wife's voice was growing farther and farther away from him, and even her appearance was beginning to blur. So, in order to see her once more in his dreams, he had actually used an illusion candle. If Senna knew about it, she would definitely be very angry and might not come to see him for a whole year. And all of these words were overheard by Mabel outside the door. So, after pulling herself together, she pushed the door open and walked in. She hugged her father and said in a spoiled tone, "Can I sleep with you tonight, Dad?" The former emperor knew that his daughter was worried about him, so he happily agreed. And that night was also the first time Mabel came to understand the mother in her father's eyes. For the first time in her life, the young emperor was sleeping with her father. Only then did she realize that this room was so empty, it made her heart ache. It made one sigh that her father was truly too lonely. When she was little, she had clearly wanted to sleep with her father many times, but without exception, she had been refused every time. Thinking about it now, she felt a little sad. She nodded, thinking that in the future she must sleep with him often and also go on outings together. Before long, the former emperor came back after changing his clothes. Seeing that the wound on his daughter's neck had already healed, he still could not help asking about it. Mabel smiled and said that the chief priest had helped heal her. Now it didn't hurt at all anymore. "Aren't you afraid of me? And don't you hate me?" "I'm a little afraid, but I don't hate you." The girl smiled with innocent sweetness, "Because you are my dad." As she said this, she suddenly lay down. "It's time to sleep, Dad. Hurry and turn off the light and come over." The former emperor flusteredly asked his daughter whether there was anything she wanted. No matter what it was, it would be fine. Mabel thought for a moment and directly made two wishes. The first was to lift the restriction that had been placed on her when she first entered the imperial city. She wanted to go play with Enrique. The former emperor instantly regretted it, but he did not want to leave the impression of being a liar in his daughter's heart, so he could only force himself to agree. Mabel happily threw her arms around her father's arm. Playfully, she said that she would save the remaining wish for later. That expression also made the former emperor think once again of his wife, who had already passed away. Even this was exactly like Senna. Hearing her mother's name once again, Mabel finally could not help asking what kind of person she really was. Oscar said that mother was gentle and kind, but to the former emperor, Senna was an incomparably heartless person. After making him fall deeply in love with her, she then left resolutely. She had pink hair like yours, and she also had amber eyes like Marquis Gardenia's. The first time I saw her, she was climbing out of a rose bush. She was like a fairy from the forest. It made me forget even how to breathe. After coming out of the bushes, she gently brushed the leaves off her body, and at the moment when I removed the last leaf for her, it felt as if something had suddenly appeared in my heart. There was no denying it. That was the moment love began. Dad, do you miss Mom? Even with Oscar and me by your side, do you still miss her? For a moment, the former emperor did not know how to answer, but unexpectedly Mabel spoke first. "I miss Mom too, but because I have Dad and Oscar, it's okay." At that moment, Esteban finally voiced his longing. "But now that I have you and Oscar by my side, I'm already very satisfied." But unexpectedly, in the very next second, he was faced with an extremely difficult question. "Then Dad, do you like Mom more, or do you like me more? You're not allowed to say you like both." Mabel tightly hugged her father and seriously said that she liked him the most. And the former emperor's lonely heart, lonely for so long, was finally healed. Of course, I also like adorable Mabel the most. The days ahead without his wife would still be painful, but because he was no longer alone, he could still endure them. "Senna, when we meet again, I hope you can use that beautiful voice of yours to praise me and say I did well." Spring passed and autumn came. In the blink of an eye, 5 years had passed. The prince who had originally been heir to the throne had actually become the youngest knight in the empire. Time passed again, without anyone noticing, and in the blink of an eye, it was time for the appointment ceremony of the Imperial Guard Knights. Ordinarily, not too many people would attend such a ceremony, but this year, countless nobles came to the scene, because this time, the youngest knight in history had been born. That person was none other than Oscar, the emperor's only brother. Everyone was marveling at his talent. The nobles with daughters of marriageable age were paying especially close attention. One after another, they all wanted to use the opportunity to build a connection with him. But all these years, Oscar had never even changed dance partners, because the only person who could stand by his side was Mabel. Soon, the somewhat boring ceremony began. This was Mabel's first time presiding over the appointment ceremony that year. She had already decided that next time she would definitely shorten the process a bit more. After waiting for a long time, it was finally her turn. When Oscar looked at her, a brilliant smile unconsciously appeared on his face. This scene left the noble young ladies present utterly captivated. It was said that he was also one of the Empire's 4 heavenly kings. Besides him, there were Enrique, Aiden, and Mabel. This left Mabel very puzzled. She simply could not understand what these children were thinking nowadays. Soon, it was time for the oath of loyalty. A guard brought up a box. Inside it, there was a sharp jeweled sword. Mabel silently infused divine power into it, and the knights stepped forward one by one to swear their vows. Among them, the most eye-catching was of course Oscar. Everyone called him a genius, but only Mabel knew what kind of bone-deep effort was hidden behind that. "I swear on my honor that my sword will point only at my lord's enemies, and my shield will protect only my lord, and I will offer up my life for my lord alone." Normally, knights should swear in the name of God, but Oscar chose to swear on his own honor instead. This shocked everyone present, but Mabel felt that this was exactly his style. And so, while still very young, Oscar officially became a knight, and the former emperor, whose way of thinking matched his perfectly, was very satisfied with this heavily revised version of the oath. He even felt that staking one's life on it was only natural. Suddenly, he asked where Aiden had gone. In order to keep those two from falling out, Mabel had no choice but to lie, saying that he had gone to buy her some delicious desserts. The head chef, who had just happened to walk over carrying a tray, instantly deflated. The father and son even started to think about replacing the chef, and Mabel quickly smoothed things over. She said that the food in the palace was already the best. She just occasionally wanted to try street snacks, since there wasn't that kind of flavor in the imperial city. Only then did the former emperor remember that his daughter had never gone out of the palace to have fun. So he made an immediate decision on the spot. They would go on a spontaneous outing. But the moment they arrived on the street, Mabel began to regret it. For the first time in her life, the young emperor was participating in a family outing. She looked around everywhere in delight. She had never expected that she could stroll leisurely through the streets without guards or attendants. Although, in order not to attract attention, the three of them had deliberately disguised themselves. It was obvious that her father's and brother's overly outstanding handsomeness simply could not be hidden at all. But even so, Mabel still had not given up on the idea of having a proper good time, though things quickly started to go wrong. She had merely casually sighed that the books looked really nice, and her father immediately rushed toward the shopkeeper without hesitation. He directly bought all the books on the stall. No matter how she tried to persuade him, it was completely useless, and she had only accidentally bumped into someone. Oscar immediately rushed over nervously. With a stern face, he gave a warning. "Take one more step closer, and I'll kill you." The two men's excessive reactions left Mabel utterly speechless. So, after the three of them arrived at a tavern, Mabel began seriously lecturing her father about how he could not just spend money recklessly. Then she lectured Oscar as well about how he could not casually threaten people. The two of them clearly wanted to argue back, but Mabel directly silenced them. In the end, they could only droop their heads and admit their mistakes. "I'm never coming out with you two again." Just then, the sound of a group of drunkards talking came from nearby. "Even like this, the country can still keep running? I thought it should have perished long ago. They actually put an ignorant little child on the throne to handle state affairs. Looks like the end of the world really is coming soon." Listening from behind, Mabel kept nodding repeatedly. She even sighed that there really were still normal people in this world after all. She quietly pricked up her ears, wanting to hear a few more of these correct remarks. But obviously, the big one and the little one beside her were never going to let her have her way. So she quickly told the two of them to put away their swords first, and seeing that they still looked unconvinced, Mabel immediately began coaxing them, saying that they were commoners right now, and it would be troublesome if their real identities were discovered. "And those words couldn't hurt me at all, because I have Dad and Oscar by my side." In just a few short sentences, she moved the two of them so much that they were completely soothed. Just as Mabel was about to leave with the two of them, the man who had been speaking was suddenly grabbed and yanked up by someone. Another man in a black robe appeared there. He questioned them about what nonsense they were spouting. Mabel took a closer look and was shocked to discover that it was actually Aiden. Why was he here? The largest intelligence organization secretly established by the young emperor was on the verge of being exposed. Just a moment ago, the three of them had been resting in the tavern, but they happened to run into someone using drunken bravado to criticize Mabel, a mere child, for being emperor. Aiden, who had just returned from outside, happened to walk right into the scene. He had never tolerated anyone speaking ill of Mabel, so he went straight up and lifted the man into the air. The very next second, the questioning voice of the retired emperor came from beside him. "Aiden, why are you here?" Caught red-handed on the spot, the boy instinctively shrank back a little, but then he saw the small figure behind the retired emperor. The meaning could not have been more obvious. She was telling him to hurry back. So Aiden turned around and was about to leave without looking back. "Stop. No matter how you look at it, this does not look like the way to a dessert shop, does it?" Mabel hurriedly stepped between the two and explained that he must have just happened to pass by here on the way to the dessert shop, right? The boy immediately nodded in agreement, but the two of them still looked as if they were at each other's throats. All right, hurry and go buy the desserts, and don't forget what I told you." Just when Mabel thought she had already managed to muddle through, the organization's vice president stepped forward and asked Aiden, "President, who exactly are these people?" Mabel immediately realized things were bad. If father found out that she had founded the Bell organization, not only would everything be confiscated, she would even be watched every day and be trapped inside the imperial city. Something like that absolutely could not happen. So she used the same old trick again, clutching her head and shouting, "My head hurts so much. It feels like it's about to split open. This move, sure enough, successfully drew both of their attention. She immediately said that she had to go home at once, and that only lying down would ease it. So the two of them paid no mind to the gaze of everyone present, and hurriedly took Mabel away from there. Aiden could not help sighing inwardly as well. Mabel's acting seemed to have improved quite a bit compared to before. Seeing this scene, the vice president's heart was full of curiosity. Who on earth were they to actually know the president's name? And they could even make the usually extremely cold president so obedient. So he completely ignored Aiden's warning not to investigate. With a click, he directly sent his subordinates to follow them. But no matter how he looked at it, it was only an ordinary carriage. So the man decided to step forward and take a closer look, but unexpectedly, he was directly taken hostage the next second. It turned out that Oscar had noticed the disturbance.
Who sent you to follow that carriage?
If you don't talk, I'll take your life. The man knew he was not joking and quickly explained that he belonged to the Bell Intelligence Organization. He had only accepted a commission to come take a look and had no intention of harming anyone. Oscar naturally continued to press him on exactly who had hired him, but the man instead told him to submit a formal investigation request to the organization. Such a pedantic way of doing things was truly hard to understand, and yet Oscar simply let the man go just like that. When he finds out that the Empire's largest organization was actually founded by his younger sister, who knows what his reaction will be? The girl's first time going out, and she was already targeted by her own subordinate. Fortunately, her brother's combat ability and counter-surveillance skills were both outstanding enough. Only then was their true identity not exposed. The man, who had fled back in a sorry state, reported the situation to the vice president. But this not only failed to dispel Cassie's thoughts, it instead made him even more curious. They were so strong, and even knew the president, they were simply too mysterious. So he made up his mind that he had to find out the identities of these people, as well as the person truly behind the president. At this moment, Mabel, the hidden president, had already returned to the palace. Aiden apologized for what had happened during the day, but Mabel did not take it to heart. Besides, something like this would not happen a second time, because going out with that father and son pair was simply too tormenting. By the way, how did this investigation go? After investigating, Aiden discovered that Bellin had been frequently entering and leaving the Imperial City. It was obvious that he was plotting something. Over the past 4 years, the Bell organization had already become the strongest guild on the continent. Aiden served as president under the identity of Eden. Meanwhile, Mabel hid her true identity behind the scenes, cutting off the organization's direct connection to the Imperial City. After that, she mobilized the organization to monitor and investigate Dublin. After a long period of unremitting effort, they finally uncovered Bellin's two objectives. The first was to take revenge on the retired Emperor Esteban for the loss of his arm, and the second was to obtain the power of immortality. When Mabel heard such a reason for the first time, she was instantly speechless. To think he had done so much for such a ridiculous reason. It had made her work overtime every day, yet she still did not dare relax easily. After all, even if she rested, the enemy would not stop acting. By the way, how are things on the guild side? Are Teacher and Cassie working seriously? The answer was of course yes, because Mabel was paying far too much. She knew very well that for working people, nothing was more important than money. Afterward, Aiden took out a list of nobles. It was filled with those who had secretly met with the old fox, and it was obvious that they wanted to make a comeback. Mabel did not care about this. With a wave of her little hand, she told Aiden to wipe them all out in one go. But Aiden suddenly reached out and reminded Mabel that it was time to go to sleep. Obviously, he still treated her like a child, even though the girl said she had already grown up. Aiden still remained very firm, but Mabel did not say anything more, and so the two of them wished each other good night. Meanwhile, Bellin was listening to his subordinate's report. He almost immediately guessed from the alias that Aiden was the president of the Bell organization, so he at once asked whether there were any high-ranking members in the organization who could be bought off. After screening, they initially identified Cassie, a commoner from the backstreets, and Franz, the director, who had been forced to work. Go approach this person called Cassie first. This time, I will also let you have a taste of being stabbed in the back by your trusted subordinate.